Phoenix Nights. Chapter 426. The situation in the Blue Lava Estate had gradually stabilized, but there was news from the Red Spirit Estate. The Red Spirit Lord Josh, who was severely injured in the Dark Moon's War of Lords, suddenly launched an attack. He subdued his son, Kaneda, who tried to take the opportunity to murder him, and prevented a patricide rebellion to seize power. In Kaneda's party, the great demon King Solana, who had been recuperating, surrendered. Schneider died, and the rest of his henchmen either died or surrendered. As for Kaneda himself, he was subdued by Josh and controlled with a secret technique. He could no longer betray. This kind of incident of father and son killing each other for power was not unusual in the demon realm, but it was commendable that Josh could counterattack his son in this situation. Sure enough, the older, the wiser. In this incident, an unexpected person played a key role. It was Royce, who had previously worked under Joseph. Royce was the heir of the Kunda family that had been deprived of his surname by Josh. Because his father, Khan, refused to hand over a certain treasure, he was executed by Josh, and his family members became slaves. However, this Royce actually endured the humiliation and was secretly ordered by Josh to lurk around Joseph. He had been monitoring Joseph's actions, and he was aware of all Joseph's actions, including Joseph's whistleblowing to the capital. After Joseph's downfall, Royce turned to Kaneda again. As a result, he became the biggest contributor to Josh's discovery of Kaneda's conspiracy. Josh praised Royce's contribution and appointed him as the deputy commander of the estate guards. The current commander was the subdued Kaneda. Royce, the deputy commander, also had the responsibility of supervision. Not only that, Royce regained the Kunda surname and lost glory. The original family members and descendants who became slaves were also pardoned. As for the illegitimate son, Leto, who caused the destruction of his father and the entire Kunda family, who was also Joseph's friend, he was personally beheaded by Royce, who had become a higher demon. After Josh regained power, he still used the excuse of recuperating. If there was something, it would be conveyed by Kaneda or Royce. Occasionally, he would show up with a weakened and sickly look, but no one dared to underestimate this seriously ill old fox. Some people even speculated that the scheming Josh was using this appearance to paralyze the Dark Moon, but he was secretly brewing his power to retaliate. As the First Lord to actively respond and spend 1 billion black crystal coins at the Lord's meeting, Josh did not constantly ask the capital for the fundraising money like Kaneda. Instead, he showed an attitude of trust in the regent. He also publicized in many ways, calling on all estates to ignore the rumors and believe in the regent's promise. This gesture was highly appreciated by the capital. However, in a sense, as time passed and the repayment date approached, this kind of unwavering trust was even more deadly than directly urging. Shenrui received the news in the Shadow Empire because he was accompanying Jia to visit the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. Athena stayed in the Dark Moon this time. Rala, who got the silver box, was more enthusiastic about studying the knowledge of the ancient runes slate. She happened to stay in the Dark Moon with Krabalis. On the other hand, Alice was visiting with her sister this time, so Kia had the opportunity to accompany. Little maid, it's finally my turn. In order to get rid of the surveillance of the Governance Association, Paglio continued to accompany them. Lomot once again stayed in the Dark Moon bitterly. The reason was very simple. He was not strong enough. However, under the guidance of Isabella, Lomot was about to fully integrate the power of the Evil Eye Tyrant. Once the integration was completed, he could reach the Demon Emperor level. However, he relied on the power of the body that fused with the companion beast to reach the Demon Emperor level. Unless there was a fortuitous encounter, every step in the future would be quite difficult. It was equivalent to synchronizing the training of the companion beast with the body. The advantage was that his strength surpassed the opponents of the same level. The Dark Moon's friendly delegation headed by Jia received the highest level of welcome and treatment in the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. Since the cooperation between the two major estates, the land improvement effect of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate was very obvious. A large area of barren land had undergone qualitative changes. Crops could be planted smoothly, and the growth momentum was good. The residents of the estate were all cheering. In fact, in order to avoid exposing the secret of the magic dust, old Gauss developed a kind of magic fertilizer mixed with some dust. The formula of these fertilizers was extremely complicated, but it was more to deceive people. Of course, it also had the effect of improving the land, but it was much inferior to the Dark Moon. In the Dark Moon's secret food base, many of the best plantations were directly transformed with the refined dust that Chunrei used in the super system. The effect was far better than ordinary magic land. Even so, it was enough to make the most barren estate of the Shadow Empire, the Bloody Vine Flower Estate, undergo earth-shaking changes. Chunrei also fulfilled his promise to eye-size this time. Using the drawings provided by General Khan, he redesigned and planned the Bloody Vine Flower City, including some characteristic buildings and magic water system. Of course, a considerable part of this design was copied from the floor plan of a familiar city in another world. These designs and plans made General Khan amazed. It was estimated that the Bloody Vine Flower Estate would be greatly transformed in the next step. The most popular thing among the soldiers and civilians of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate was naturally the Battle Ball. The Battle Ball, which had become popular because of the rise of the Dark Moon, was now officially settled in the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. Including the venue and the ball, they were the most authentic specifications. Moreover, the players and referees immediately gave people a sense of inspiration after receiving professional training. The Battle Ball craze centered on the estate, and quickly spread to the surrounding areas. For this reason, Khan specially expanded the small arena of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate, and added some temporary stadiums. Even so, it still couldn't meet the increasing demand. In the future city blueprint of Chunrei for the Bloody Vine Flower Estate, there were several stadium designs. Today was the third day of Jia's visit to the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. The most exciting battle ball game of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate was staged in the arena. It was between the Dark Moon's Red Blood team and the Bloody Vine Flower Estate's Wolf Fang team. General Crawford's only son, Monroe, who had specially learned the battle ball in the Dark Moon, and several accompanying learners appeared in the Wolf Fang team representing the Bloody Vine Flower Estate this time. This was the strongest Higher Demon team at present. The competition of Higher Demon was faster and more intense. Their control and skills were relatively stronger. Of course, the magic circle of the stadium also had greater restrictions. There would be no scenes that the audience couldn't see clearly. The friendly match was one of the projects of Jia's visit and exchange. After the news spread, many fans of the capital, including some upper-class nobles, rushed to the Bloody Vine Flower City in advance, causing the local hotels to be almost full. The limited tickets were inflated to a terrifying price. With a whistle, the game began. Although there were several main players like Monroe, the game could not be won by one or two people. Soon, the Dark Moon's Red Blood team had the upper hand. Whether it was individual or overall cooperation, they showed great strength. The audience was amazed by the scene. It turns out that the ball can be played like this. As the birthplace of the battle ball, it was reasonable for the Dark Moon to be stronger, but the audience of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate was still desperately cheering for their team. Even after the home team lost 2 goals in a row, the enthusiasm was still unabated. As a midfielder, Monroe shouted to remind his teammates while organizing an effective attack. He launched the most threatening defensive counterattack. Unfortunately, his teammates' kick hit the goalpost, and there was a sigh of regret in the stadium. The Dark Moon took the opportunity to launch a counterattack and scored another goal. 3 o'clock. Monroe calmly organized his teammates to compress the defense. After the tackle was successful, he dribbled the ball past the opposing defender alone. When several Dark Moon defenders quickly returned to cover the defense and formed a double team, Monroe unexpectedly passed the ball to his teammate who plugged in. This time, his teammate did not disappoint Monroe's pass. He scored with a powerful shot. In an instant, the entire stadium was boiling. Almost all the audience cheered. Many people shouted the names of Monroe and the goal scorer. Some female fans even took off their shirts to celebrate boldly. The jumping two balls became a beautiful scenery on the field. The fanaticism was no less than the fans that Chenrui knew in the other world. General Crawford nodded secretly as he watched. A gratified expression flashed in his eyes. There should not be much suspense in the outcome of the game. The significance of the goal itself is actually limited. The key is that my son's calmness on the field, not being greedy at the last moment, trust in his teammates, and the spirit of teamwork are commendable. If it is the arrogant genius young man in the past, this situation will definitely not be seen. It seems that I have indeed gained a lot in the past few months in the Dark Moon. The game was finally over. The Dark Moon's Red Blood team was a little lenient at the back, allowing the Wolf Fang team to score 2 more goals. The final result was still fixed at 7-3. Although his team lost, the Bloody Vine Flower Estate's audience was quite satisfied to be able to score 3 goals from the Dark Moon. They all felt that the trip was worthwhile. I heard that there will be a friendly match between the intermediate demon group tomorrow. The excitement at that time can also be imagined. When the group returned to the Lord's mansion, Crawford specially invited Jia and Chenrui to the council hall. Thank you to the Dark Moon players for bringing such a wonderful game to the people of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate, Crawford said with a smile. By the way, I specially invited a few royal chefs from the capital. At tonight's banquet, Princess Jia and all the guests will taste the most delicious specialties of our Shadow Empire. Jia nodded politely. Then I'm looking forward to it. By the way, Your Highness has been in my Bloody Vine Flower Estate for 3 days and visited many places. I wonder if you have any suggestions? Please don't hesitate to advise. Crawford said so, but his eyes fell on the human financial officer. The Dark Moon's Princess Royal is indeed an excellent leader who is talented and good at using people, and this human financial officer is the most outstanding representative of the capable minister. The economic development of the Dark Moon is almost inseparable from his planning. I don't dare to advise. Chenrui, if you have any ideas, you might as well express them. Jia understood Crawford's meaning, and she glanced at Chenrui. Seeing the expectant eyes of the 2 Sir Lords, Chenrui secretly smiled bitterly. I'm just a transmigrator from another world. At most, I'm a little clever. Most of the rest is plagiarism. I'm definitely not a capable minister. Alright then, I'll continue to plagiarize. Actually, I don't have any good ideas, but judging from the popularity of today's game, the Battle Ball of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate currently has considerable influence. Even the surrounding estates and your empire's capital are fascinated. Then we might as well make a fuss in this regard and use the Battle Ball to expand the influence of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. This influence will drive the rapid development of the economy. Didn't the general notice that in the past few days of the game, all walks of life in the Bloody Vine Flower City seem to have benefited a lot? Sir Chenrui means to hold more games to drive economic development? It's not that more games should be held, but every game should be exciting. It can be a friendly match between the civilian and military, or a city exchange like ours today. When there are more cities with teams in the future, we can also hold the most popular league, but it's too early to say these now. What I mean is that we can now use the Battle Ball itself to increase considerable income. In addition to the income from tickets and gambling, we can also open a Battle Ball merchandise store. Just before my visit to your estate, the Dark Moon's fan shop has been completed and opened. It mainly sells team jerseys, team emblems, team flags, accessories, carvings, and various cheering magic items to all fans. We can also let the players who are loved by everyone sign and sell in limited quantities. This kind of fan shop can be directly operated by the official or authorized by a limited number of private chain stores. Judging from the current situation of the Shadow Empire and the Fallen Angel Empire, the popularity of the Battle Ball is already a trend. It is likely to spread to the entire demon realm in the future. I believe I don't need to elaborate to the general about the direct benefits and huge economic benefits it will bring. Crawford listened carefully and kept nodding. The female clerk on the side was quickly recording. At the end, she showed admiration and exclaimed, If it weren't in front of Royal Highness Jia, I would like to win over Sir Chenrui. It is really enviable that your Highness can have such an internal talent. Thank you for Sir's valuable suggestion. I will start preparing for this fan shop immediately. General is overpraising. General's courage is really admirable. Chenrui was a little embarrassed. It was just a copy. It was indeed overpraising. After the two sides exchanged a few polite words, Crawford happily agreed to Shay's various requests for further cooperation. Then, he winked at the clerk, and the clerk retreated with several officials. Crawford looked hesitant. There is one more thing. It was a little difficult to say at first, but it is related to the most important interests of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate, so I still plan to say it. Please help, Princess Royal Highness. Jia and Chenrui looked at each other and said, General, please say it. Whether it is the cooperative relationship between the two places or our personal friendship, I will try my best to help. To be honest with your Highness, in the northern part of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate, in the Black Iron Mountain range spanning the Shadow Empire and the Bloody Empire, there is a misty swamp. There is a crystal valley in the swamp. Chenrui's heart moved, then he heard Crawford continue to say, Under the crystal valley, there is a large crystal mineral vein which was recently discovered. This will become the most important resource of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. Crystal mineral vein? Jia was slightly moved. Crystal mineral is the magic crystal coin commonly used in the demon realm. According to the purity of refining, it can be used as a common currency and high-end magic crystal material. Crystal mineral vein symbolizes huge wealth. I didn't expect that there is a large crystal mineral vein under a barren land like the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. This crystal mineral vein was told to Catherine by Chenrui at the beginning. It seemed that he even cheated a kiss from Her Majesty Empress. However, the crystal mineral vein is the biggest secret of an estate, and also an important secret of the Shadow Empire. Even if the Dark Moon and Crawford have a close friendship now, they shouldn't reveal it. What is this request? Crawford sighed and said, The devil fruit that your Highness gave me at the auction last time finally made a breakthrough in the intermediate stage of the Demon Emperor, which had been stagnant for many years. Moreover, my only son, Monroe, has made rapid progress thanks to your Highness' care in the Dark Moon. I'm a soldier, so I'm not good at expressing my gratitude in words. I, Crawford Travis, will remember your Highness's friendship. The crystal mineral vein is one of the secrets of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. Her Majesty Catherine of the capital also attaches great importance to this resource. I have made a military order to guarantee that the preliminary mining work will be completed within the specified time and a certain amount of crystal mineral will be handed in. However, there are some difficulties in the mining process. If it can't be solved, I won't be able to complete Her Majesty Empress requirements on time. According to the military order, I will resign from all positions including the estate and the military. Jia and Chenrui were secretly surprised. Through this series of cooperation, Crawford was an important figure in the military. He had established a good friendship with the Dark Moon and Jia. He was currently the most suitable candidate for cooperation with the Shadow Empire. Once he was forced to resign and someone else took over as the Bloody Vine Flower Estate Lord, I'm afraid that unpredictable things will happen. It will naturally be quite disadvantageous to the Dark Moon. Jia nodded as she understood. General, it's just a personal friendship between you and me now. If there is anything you need me to help, just let me know. Crawford nodded. Then I'll make it clear. There seems to be a strange magic circle set up in the crystal mineral vein. It can't be mined normally, and many miners have been lost. At that time, I sent many people to investigate, but I couldn't figure it out. Not long ago, I went to the capital to invite my friend Master Rummenig from the Mechanic Association, but after the Master entered the crystal mineral vein, he actually disappeared. His whereabouts are still unknown. I can hardly explain to his family. I'm in a terrible situation about the crystal mine. I almost have nowhere to go. I wonder if Princess Royal Highness can find a way to help? Chenrui was puzzled. Logically, as one of the important bases of the Bloodfall, The Crystal Valley has completely disintegrated after Catherine defeated the 3 demon overlords. There should be no danger. Why would such a strange incident happen? The Master Rummenigge mentioned by Crawford was an old acquaintance of Chenrui. When Chenrui participated in the mechanic contest of the Dark Shadow Empire's capital as Arthur, he received a great deal of care from Rummenigge. At the first meeting, Rummenigge gave him a book on the basics of mechanics and a Master Recommendation badge for passing the preliminaries. Later, when Chenrui was troubled by Master Leo in the contest, it was Master Rummenigge and another Master Kosa who stepped forward and thwarted Leo's challenge. Even after Chenrui officially became a mechanic master, Rummenigge took the initiative to give him his research time in the ancient magic tower. Although Master Rummenigge also had the original intention of winning over talents for the Shadow Empire, Chenrui's principle was to repay the kindness of others. Now that Rummenigge was missing in the crystal mineral vein, Chenrui should go and rescue him for both public and private reasons. It seems that it's time to revisit the Crystal Valley. Chapter 427. Although she saw Chenrui secretly hinting, Jia did not immediately agree to Crawford. Instead, she showed a hesitant look. When it comes to magic circles, only Chenrui is the best at it. However, the crystal mine vein is not a trivial matter for an estate, or even an empire. Moreover, it is directly linked to Crawford's power and status. Crawford must have tried many times. He even invited the capital's master. In the end, he made a request to the Dark Moon, his ally, because he had no other choice. This crystal mine is likely to contain an unknown huge danger. Seeing that Jia did not say anything, Chenrui took the initiative to say, "Princess Royal, are you worried about the safety of the little princess after that one leaves?" Crawford quickly said, "Please rest assured that this is the Shadow Empire and the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. Her Majesty Empress attaches great importance to this visit. Even if there are demon overlord-level assassins, I can guarantee the safety of the 2 royal highnesses." The implication was that Empress Catherine had sent a demon overlord-level powerhouse to secretly monitor and protect the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. She believed that even Obsidian or Blood Falls people would not dare to cause trouble under her nose. When Jia heard Chenrui spoke like this, she hesitated a little and finally nodded. "General is my friend and also a friend of the Dark Moon people. I will definitely help you with this, but even a senior master like Master Rummenigge is missing. I'm afraid the problem of this crystal mine is not simple. We can guarantee to do our best. As for whether the problem can be solved, it depends on luck." Crawford showed joy. "Thank you, Your Highness. If you can help me solve this biggest problem." When Monroe returned, he expressed to me that he wanted to officially join the Dark Moon's Legion as an individual. At that time, I will use the resources of the military to send 1,000 magician guards to accompany and protect Monroe. As soon as these words came out, Chenrui and Jia's eyes lit up at the same time. The Magician Legion's role on the battlefield was quite powerful. At present, the Dark Moon had 3 legions, Red Blood, Flame Light, and Moon Shadow, as well as the Wyvern's Air Legion. They only lacked the Magician Legion. Although Jia had vigorously recruited them in this regard, the progress was far less than ordinary soldiers. Crawford's meaning was obvious. The so-called protection of the guards was actually to give the Dark Moon a Magician Legion of 1,000 people. It was a big deal to send out a team of 1,000 magicians. It even exceeded the authority of the Lord. However, considering Crawford's military identity as the 3rd general, there would definitely be a special way. In any case, the general was now going to stake everything on one throw. "We will do our best and not let the general down. Let's do it this way. I just received a message from Athena that I need to return to the Dark Moon to deal with some urgent matters. I will return to the Dark Moon secretly tomorrow morning and invite the master to come along." Chenrui had already planned to go to the Crystal Valley anyway. The so-called "that one or master" was simply a diversion to make Crawford unable to figure out the truth of the Dark Moon. In fact, after the assassination at the auction last time, Crawford's evaluation of the Dark Moon had increased by several levels after killing 2 demon overlords in an instant. Jia understood what he meant. Since he was determined to make this trip, the identity of Chenrui must disappear. She immediately said, "Then it's decided. By the way, General Crawford, I'm afraid our people will encounter some inconveniences in your estate. This bloody vine flower magic badge represents the Lord's authorization. It can provide a lot of convenience. Now that the crystal mine has stopped mining, and it is heavily guarded. If necessary, the army can also be mobilized to assist." Crawford handed over a magic badge with the logo of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate. Jia took the badge and nodded. "Without further ado, I will go back to arrange manpower and make some preparations now." After Crawford sent Jia away, the doubts in his heart were revealed. In fact, he had reported the difficulties of the crystal mine to the capital long ago. Catherine the Great attached great importance to it. She sent an investigation team, but it was fruitless. Instead, more and more miners were missing. Later, he invited Master Rummenig of the royal family, but he mysteriously disappeared underground. Crawford immediately reported it to the capital urgently, but Catherine the Great, who was resourceful, did not send a new master. She only gave a 4-word response. "Ask for help from the Dark Moon." Crawford felt incredible. No matter what, the Dark Moon is just an estate. Can it solve the problem of an empire? Maybe Her Majesty Empress has any special intentions? However, Crawford had always believed in Catherine the Great's decision. Now that Jia had agreed, it was better to wait and see. There might really be a surprise. Jia and Chenrui walked all the way out of the Lord's mansion, took the carriage, and returned to Crawford's special residence. This was a luxurious mansion. It was once the private property of a nobleman. It was purchased by Crawford. This time, it was specially used as a temporary residence for Jia and her party. It was considered well-mannered. "How confident are you in going to the Crystal Valley this time?" Jia glanced at the lush flowers in the garden and asked faintly. "I'm not sure. I have to see the situation there." Chenrui shrugged habitually. "However, this is a magician legion of 1,000 people. Moreover, we can't lose Crawford as an ally now. Even if I'm not sure, I have to try. I will leave early tomorrow morning." When he mentioned the Crystal Valley incident to Jia before, he only mentioned it briefly. Even Kia knew that he failed to save her mother, Freya. He just luckily escaped from the 3 demon overlords. After all, that wonderful past involved a certain majesty of the Shadow Empire. "Then let Piglio go with you." Jia knew that Chenrui encountered great danger in the Blue Lava Estate last time. After all, she could be more at ease with the peak stage of the demon overlord taking care of him. No need. Although Crawford said that someone is secretly protecting him, he is not as reliable as the people on our side, especially Alice. She likes to go out, so someone must secretly protect her. I have been to the Crystal Valley. In case of danger, it should be fine to escape. Piglio should stay with you for the time being. If there are any problems that can't be solved, I will contact him in time. Jia was silent. Chenrui knew that she was worried about him, so he sneered. At this time, as a Sir Lord, you should show a caring attitude. You should give your subordinates a lot of instructions and express your concerns so that the subordinates will be grateful and swear to complete the mission with their lives. As the saying goes, do your best until death. Jia glanced at him. Then, as you wish, say something. Value determines the meaning of existence. Your current value does not allow any accidents. That's too straightforward. Chenrui was a little speechless. There's no such way to win over subordinates. You should at least say something sensational. Do you think it's necessary to say that to a wretched subordinate who often goes beyond the rules? Jia's sharp gaze fell on the claw that held her hand. The owner of the claw was naturally a certain wretched subordinate. Although her gaze was sharp, she did not withdraw her hand. The wretched subordinate knew in his heart and sighed. To be honest, there must be danger at the crystal mine. Even the senior master of the Mechanic Association is missing. I'm actually very uncertain, but for the Dark Moon and for you, I must go this time. There is also a confidential matter that I want to tell you before I leave. It seemed that there was an exaggeration in this sentence. In fact, for the sake of Master Rummenigge, he had to make this trip. However, when Jia and he first met, it started from such a beautiful misunderstanding. Jia reminded herself that there might be a problem with this guy, but she couldn't help but follow him a few steps to the back of a tree. As she was about to listen to his so-called secret, this guy unexpectedly leaned forward and hugged her slender waist from behind. His whole body was attached to her. "I've wanted to hug my beloved Royal Highness like this outside for a long time. This is the biggest secret in the heart of a little financial officer." "Asshole! What kind of secret is this?" Jia was very surprised. "This is not the secret room or even the Dark Moon Palace, but the Shadow Empire. Although there are only 2 people now, there are maids and servants not far in front. This asshole is too bold." As she was about to struggle, she heard a hateful voice in her ear. "This is an absolute secret. Your Royal Highness, be careful. It will be bad if you are discovered by others." Before she could break free, her white jade-like neck was kissed. She trembled slightly, then the guy had already kissed her earlobe. This was the sensitive area of Princess Royal Highness. Her whole body suddenly softened. The hateful hand had reached her chest and wandered around unscrupulously. She didn't know what method he used, but the bra was actually undone. The white jade-like peaks gradually became bigger in the man's grasp, and the pink buds at the end also stood up. Sure enough, every good man has a pair of hands that are good at undressing people and superb massage skills. Jia's ears were all red. Especially the strong stimulation that was similar to having an affair. It made her breathing more and more rapid. At this moment, the voice of little Loli suddenly came from a distance. "Sister! Where are you?" Jia, who was confused and infatuated, suddenly woke up and pushed away a certain bold and wretched subordinate. Princess Royal Highness hurriedly tidied up her clothes. She felt her face was burning. "What's wrong with me? I'm actually being intimate with him in such a place. It will be troublesome if I'm seen by others." After a while, little Loli appeared in front of Jia and Chenrui with Kia. Alice, dressed in a strange outfit, turned around and said, "Look at my new clothes! Is it beautiful?" Little Loli bought the unique clothes of the Shadow Empire. She also covered her face with a veil, looking mysterious. Jia calmed her mind and nodded. "Not bad." Little Loli looked at Chenrui again. The guy who had just molested her sister obviously had a guilty conscience, but he was just praising her for being beautiful. Alice proudly made a few poses and asked casually, "Sister, I heard from the maid that you came back early. Why didn't I find you just now?" Before Jia spoke, Chenrui spoke first. "Because I plan to rush back to the Dark Moon tomorrow morning to deal with urgent matters, so Princess Royal has a confidential matter to tell me alone." As soon as Jia heard the word confidential, the scene of being hugged and kissed by him just now appeared in her mind. A blush flashed across her face. Alice curled her lips in disappointment. "Why? You want to go back first?" Little Loli had been very excited previously, so she didn't notice the strangeness of her sister's expression, but a little maid with bright eyes was different. She even carefully noticed the red mark on Princess Royal's neck. Then she glanced at the guy with ulterior motives beside her. As someone who had been through it, she suddenly understood something in her heart. The guy finally finished dealing with little Loli and pulled the little maid away from Jia's sight, but he was pinched hard by her fingernails. He saw the little maid said with a smile, "Dear master, before you leave, do you want to discuss some life secrets with me alone? If I'm not satisfied, don't even think about leaving, okay?" Chenrui knew that his secret was exposed. Judging from the little maid's sour smile, if he didn't do his best tonight, perhaps he really wouldn't be able to leave. Chapter 428. When Kia heard that Chenrui was going to the Crystal Valley, she wanted to follow him to see the place where her mother died, but the Crystal Valley was obviously not peaceful now. Chenrui finally convinced her. Last time, Chenrui used the spiritual link to cancel the symbiotic contract with Paglio in Town Lupin, but he used truncation instead of cancellation. Cancellation meant elimination, while truncation meant to retain the attributes obtained from the connection and forcibly break the link, but the price was higher than cancellation. Shinrei spent 1,000,000 auras to cut off the symbiotic contract at that time. It was not because he deliberately wanted to steal Paglio's life, but because he had spent hundreds of years in the training ground in the past, which far exceeded the lifespan of ordinary humans. If he cancelled it, he would probably die immediately due to the exhaustion of his lifespan, let alone covering Paglio and Athena to escape. In this way, just like Manu last time, the characteristics given by the symbiotic contract were retained, including the powerful ability to have sex. In fact, even without the power given by the symbiotic contract, the super system's own blue, red, and wretched characteristics of double training were enough for him to run on another battlefield. Especially, double training, he could use the help of the Dark Will to deal with the special devouring physique of the succubus maid. In the morning, Shinrei slowly sat up, pulled the blanket over, and covered Kia's fair and attractive body. Last night's hard work made the little maid orgasm several times, and she was almost paralyzed. She was sleeping sweetly now. He gently kissed the succubus' forehead, got up quietly, put on his clothes, and walked out of the room. At the moment when Shinrei turned around and walked out of the door, Kia's beautiful eyes opened gently, and she quietly watched his back disappear. The little maid understood that she was not strong enough to be a burden to him. The only thing she could do now was to pray for him to come back safely. Shinrei bid farewell to Jia and her sister, rode on a wyvern, and left the bloody vine flower city. He flew toward the dark moon in the south, but in fact, he took a detour to the north. His goal was the Black Iron Mountain Range in the north. The rule of the contract was that the same contract could only be used on the same target once in a lifetime. Even if Paglio wanted to sign a symbiotic contract again, it was impossible. Fortunately, there were other equality contracts. Shinrei's equality link quota was now 5. After signing the non-harming equality link with Paglio, there were still 4 spots left. Since the temporary battle enhancement effect was quite obvious, 2 of the 4 spots were given to Rala and Krabalis, who had the strongest combat power, while 2 spots were temporarily vacant. Lomad was unable to sign a second contract because he had already signed some kind of spiritual contract with the companion beast, Evil Eye Tyrant, while Delia, Athena, and others admitted that their combat power was insufficient, so they did not want to waste the limited spots. Shinrei did not force them. His idea was to wait until he had accumulated enough faith crystals before signing a contract with them one by one. In the future, he would use the star enhancement that could permanently enhance their strength. However, that was not cheap. Just the first level of star enhancement required 100,000 faith crystals. It was incomparable with the 100 crystals consumed by the time-limited battle enhancement. Moreover, it was grayed out now and could not be used. After the establishment of Shura's war faith, the production speed of faith crystals had indeed increased a lot. At present, there were more than 900. It would not be long before he could try the strongest, royal star transformation skill. The area of the Bloody Vine Flower Estate was very wide, but it was slightly smaller than the Dark Moon. Shinrei was going to the northernmost Black Iron Mountain Range. Even riding the wyvern, it took him 5 days to reach the misty swamp where the Crystal Valley was located. This speed was already very fast. The last time he went with Manu, he rode on the mutated griffin, and it took him 7 days. As Crawford said, the misty swamp area was heavily guarded, and there were many magic protection circles, but this defense was aimed at the entrance that Catherine forcibly broke open with her power. Shinrei knew that the Crystal Valley also had a special passage that used the dragon inscription to enter and exit. Sure enough, those hidden inscriptions were not destroyed, especially the triple inscriptions in front of the pool. Through the pool's teleportation, Shinrei successfully bypassed the defensive military force and entered the Crystal Valley. The scenery of the Crystal Valley was still beautiful, but the original Devouring Hall, Nightmare Valley, Crystal Lair and other facilities were abandoned, and some were transformed into mining facilities. Shinrui recalled the past when he was undercover in the Crystal Valley as if it was yesterday. The death of Freya and Raphael had always been a hidden pain in his heart. Power! I still need stronger power to be able to protect important people. Shinrui took a deep breath and set his eyes on the entrance of the mining area, which was the former site of the crystal dragon Jacob's crystal lair. The miners here had long been evacuated by General Crawford. Except for the heavily guarded army outside, there was no one in the entire Crystal Valley. Shinrui was still dressed in a cloak. According to the mining map provided by Crawford, he entered the mine pit and sneaked all the way with the light of the mine pit. This underground mine pit was quite spacious and accessible in all directions. Its grandeur was comparable to that of Mountain Shillong. Strictly speaking, it was not built by Crawford or Catherine, but by the original crystal dragon Jacob. Because the crystal dragon had not recovered from the serious injury caused by Paglio back then, due to his special physique, potions could not work. He needed to use magic circles to absorb the power of the crystal mine to repair his body. However, before the poor crystal dragon could fully recover, he encountered a wretched Master Arthur. As a result, he was lucky enough to have a friendly learning with the demon realm's top beauty. He was even more injured, and he fled in embarrassment. Unsurprisingly, the magic map was interfered with by some force, and it quickly lost its effectiveness. Shinrui continued to move forward with the physical map provided by Crawford. Of course, there were also considerable errors in this map, especially the illusion caused by some magic circle interference. However, Shinrui was no longer the rookie in Mountain Shillong. He marked and corrected the map while fumbling forward. Although this kind of carpet search was slow, and he would often reach a dead end, it could avoid mistakes to the greatest extent. The corrected map was still of considerable value to the Bloody Vine Flower estate. Sure enough, after a while, Shinrui keenly discovered the existence of the magic circle, and it was also mixed with the breath of the dragon inscription. Perhaps it was the mechanism left by the crystal dragon back then. It seemed to be a set of quite complicated mechanisms. It was not so easy to dispel the dragon inscription. It was just like a minesweeper. Even if there was the corresponding knowledge and facilities, it was still very dangerous. With the help of the super system, Shinrui had fully mastered Paglio's teachings. When he was in the Crystal Valley, the Crystal Dragon also imparted part of his own insights. Later, with the addition of Rala's powerful inscription knowledge, Shinrui's dragon inscription level now surpassed Paglio, and was second only to Rala. He did not spend a lot of time and mental effort to crack the inscription, but he carefully bypassed it. He tried not to disturb or trigger those inscriptions just in case. He also searched for the whereabouts of Master Rummenig. About 3 hours later, Shinrui finally figured out the law of the changes of the dragon inscription. It was indeed a large-scale and advanced inscription magic circle. He traced the source step by step and carefully approached the source. The size of this pit was larger than Shinrui imagined. It seemed to be endless, and the terrain and layout didn't seem to be like a pit, but a complicated and huge underground maze. What surprised Shinrui was that after passing through a few chain inscriptions, he actually vaguely felt a trace of ancient runes. He was very clear that the crystal dragon didn't understand ancient runes. When he grabbed Rala's stone slab, he only used the mysterious power of the stone slab itself to heal his injuries. Moreover, the 6 stone slabs had been stolen by Shinrui now. With the crystal dragon's level, he definitely couldn't set up ancient runes of this level. Could it be that the Blood Falls still has a master in this field? While Shinrui was surprised, he suddenly showed vigilance, and hid his body in the shadows. Soon, a figure appeared in the faint light ahead. The figure's movements were a bit stiff. His whole body was covered in crystal-clear crystals which reflected a strange light under the magic lamp. Race, Crystal Man, Puppet. Comprehensive Strength Assessment, C-. Physique, C. Strength, C. Spirit, F-. Agility, D-. Attribute, Anti-Magic. Demon King level. Crystal Man? This familiar crystal puppet made Shinrui finally understand that the strange things that happened here were all caused by his old friend. Although there were still some doubts about the ancient runes, Chen Rui didn't think much about it. He followed the crystal puppet all the way forward. The crystal puppet had no autonomous consciousness. It would only obey the master's orders. Although it had a certain perception ability, it still couldn't detect the stalker who had reached the demon emperor level. The light began to brighten. The crystal man came to a place and stopped. There were several similar crystal puppets inside, and many demons carried the mind ore from the surrounding mines from time to time. These demons were dispirited and looked very tired. However, they would be beaten or even killed by the crystal man if they stopped for a moment. Judging from their attire, they should be the miners who had disappeared in the previous pit. The role of the crystal puppet seemed to be to patrol and supervise. Chen Rui thought of something and secretly approached them. He quietly changed into a miner's attire, then he walked forward boldly, took a basket of ore, and followed the miners who were carrying it forward. The mind ore was carried by the miners to a place which was a hall surrounded by a circle of crystal puppets. It was heavily guarded. There was something like a teleportation portal at the front, and the ore was poured into the teleportation portal. Near the teleportation portal, there was a middle-aged man in his 40s with an extraordinary bearing. He was directing the miners to draw magic imprints on the ground. Chen Rui's eyes lit up. This middle-aged man was one of his targets this time, Master Rummenig. Chapter 429. Master Rummenig was setting up a magic circle. Suddenly, a miner attracted his attention. This miner did not follow his instructions to engrave the magic patterns, but he skillfully drew another strange symbol. With Master Rummenig's eyesight, he actually couldn't fully understand the meaning of it for a while, but he was sure that it was soundproof. Rummenig knew something was wrong, so he walked over calmly and pretended to command the miner. The surrounding crystal men had limited intelligence. They would only monitor the situation in the hall according to the order, so they didn't notice anything unusual. Master, you can speak now. Those crystal men can't hear you for the time being, but you still have to pretend on the surface. The miner was naturally Chen Rui. As he spoke, he continued to crouch down and pretend to engrave the magic patterns. Rummenig's eyes flashed with surprise. You are... Of course, Chen Rui would not expose the identity of Arthur. I was entrusted by General Crawford to save you. I must first understand the specific situation here. Rummenig was overjoyed, but he was also considered old and experienced. He knew that he needed to be calmer at this time. On the surface, he was still pointing and replying. When I was investigating the accident in the mining area, I found traces of a hidden magic circle. Then, when I was investigating deeply and trying to dispel it, I was captured by a terrifying powerhouse. I was forced to complete the hosting of the magic circle for him. What does this powerhouse look like? What is the function of the magic circle here? Chen Rui had already guessed a little, but in order to get certain information, he still asked one more question. That powerhouse is thin and has white hair, but his strength is unfathomable. My Demon King level strength is completely powerless in front of him. Just a look from him can oppress me to the point that I can't move. He is currently in a special training. You must be careful. If you are discovered, it will be over. Rummenig's words were also reminding this ally, who came to rescue him. If he was not sure, he must return and report to Crawford as soon as possible. Rummenig was actually very clear that although the powerhouse said that he would let him go when the work was completed, there would only be one ending for him at that time. That was to be silenced. The person who was sent now was the only hope to get out, so he must be careful. However, Rummenig didn't know that even if Crawford himself came here, it would still be useless. That powerhouse is a powerful dragon with the strength of the peak stage of the Demon Overlord. When Chen Rui heard the appearance of the powerhouse, he was more certain in his heart. It is really the crystal dragon, Jacob. As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. Who would have thought that Jacob would come back after retreating? The magical arrays here are very profound. Even I don't really understand them. For example, the magical array that is closely guarded by the crystal people leads to another cave. It seems to be using the essence of the underground crystal mine to carry out some kind of cultivation or recovery. Every day, that expert will cultivate for a period of time. Our current one is an expanded one-way space transmission magic circle that continuously transports those high-purity crystal ores to a distant location. Hearing Rummenigge's words, Chenrei finally confirmed the speculation in his heart. Sure enough, the crystal dragon, Jacob, is using the special power of these crystal mine resources to recover from the injuries caused by Catherine last time. As for the one-way space transmission, it was obviously the habit of the greedy dragons to take the opportunity to amass money while healing. Due to Catherine's deterrence, the Bloodfall force had given up the Crystal Valley. The crystal dragon's healing should be a personal behavior, so the location of the crystal mine transmission should be Jacob's private warehouse or the location of the treasure. Jacob once killed beasts Raphael and Kia's mother, Freya. Since he happened to meet this time, he must not let this enemy go. Chenrei understood that he was not Jacob's opponent at present. Even if he destroyed the recovery magic circle, he couldn't really give Jacob a fatal blow. Instead, it would alert the enemy. Although he was not the Crystal Dragon's opponent, there was an old friend of the Crystal Dragon who should have enough power to defeat or even eliminate Jacob. Jacob's treatment was about to end now, and Paglio couldn't come in such a short time, so he had to be patient for the time being. Chenrei's mind turned quickly for a while, and he already had an idea. "Master, can you please be patient for a while? If it's short, 1 or 2 days, if it's long, a few days. I must leave here first and go back to report to the higher-ups. I will definitely rescue you safely by then." This was exactly what Rummenigge hoped. The powerhouse's strength was unfathomable. At least, he had to successfully spread the news. Anyway, his work would take a long time to complete. For the time being, there was no danger to his life. While the Crystal Dragon had not woken up from the recovery magic circle, Chenrei ended his brief meeting with Rummenigge. He changed his appearance several times and left Jacob's territory successfully. When returning to the intersection before he met the Crystal Man, Chenrei once again felt the faint ancient rune's breath, and he couldn't help but have doubts. "I didn't feel this breath in the secret mining area or hall just now. It should obviously have nothing to do with the Crystal Dragon. So, what is the source that emits the power of the ancient runes?" Chenrei's heart moved. He didn't immediately return to the ground, but he walked in that direction. The deeper he went, the more complicated the terrain became. There was no light, but he could vaguely perceive that this was a huge tunnel. Chenrei was already sure that these were not made by the Crystal Dragon. Or rather, the Crystal Dragon temporarily established a secret mining area or borrowed the existing tunnel. The hazy ancient rune's breath really began to become clearer. This breath seemed to be even more ancient, far better than the inscriptions that Rala experimented with. With his current knowledge, he actually couldn't distinguish the specific level and attribute. Could it be that there are still ancient treasures hidden under this huge crystal mineral vein? Or is it one of the 7 things that Rala once said besides the silver box? Chenrei was a little excited, but unknown treasures were likely to be accompanied by unknown accidents or dangers. For now, it was better to solve the Crystal Dragon's matter first. After all, Chenrei had experienced so many things. After calming down and thinking about it, he suppressed his curiosity and impulse. He didn't continue to walk. He retraced his original path, bypassed the sensing mechanism of the dragon inscription, and went all the way to the ground. He didn't need to take the wyvern to return to the Bloody Vine Flower City for 4 or 5 days. The current Star Gate could already set up 2 star points. Just in case, he had already set up a star point in the Bloody Vine Flower City. Now he only needed to return to the Crystal Valley to set up another star point, then he could achieve dual connection between the 2 locations. He could travel back and forth between the 2 locations in the blink of an eye. Of course, due to the upper limit of the star points, the 2 star points originally set in the Dark Moon and the Red Spirit were cancelled. The reason why the Red Spirit set up the star point was related to the disappearance of a slime. It was also the real inside story of Josh's great power to overthrow Kaneda. The reason why he had to return to the Crystal Valley to set up instead of the underground was because of the automatic change characteristics of the dragon inscription. In order to prevent disturbing the crystal dragon or other accidents, he returned to the Bloody Vine Flower City to inform Paglio. Although Paglio couldn't come here directly through the Stargate, with the Paglio's flying power, it was much faster than the Wyvern. He might be able to arrive in 2 or 3 days. Before the poison dragon arrived, Shenrui would not wait foolishly in the Crystal Valley, but he had very important things to complete. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. For the dragons who had a long life, these 5 days were just a blink of an eye. However, during this time, the crystal dragon Jacob was not in a good mood. He felt that even time had slowed down. The days of getting injured on top of his injuries were naturally very unpleasant. The crystal dragon's physique was special, so he couldn't use potions. He could only rely on the Fountain of Resurrection, the power of the crystal mine, and the ancient runes slate to slowly recover. The injuries caused by the enemy 2,000 years ago were finally about to recover, but he was set up by someone ruthlessly. The Fountain of Resurrection disappeared, and the ancient runes slate was stolen. Even the Crystal Valley that he managed for 2,000 years was forced to give up. The most unfortunate thing was that at that time, he also encountered the strongest woman in the demon realm. Even with 3 against 1, he was still beaten to the point of fleeing. The injuries on his body were even more serious. As a dragon's, the eccentric crystal dragon had always been arrogant and unreasonable. He didn't have a good interpersonal relationship in Bloodfall. This time, he lost his base territory again. Jacob didn't want to be like Asgalar and associate with those guys he didn't like, so he sneaked back. Firstly, it was to use the power of the crystal mine to repair his body. Secondly, it was to gather the crystal mine crazily and use the transmission magic circle to send these wealth to his treasure hiding place. Even if the matter was exposed and he had to leave, the collected crystal mine could also be used for him to heal his injuries in another place. Unfortunately, after losing the ancient runes slate and the Fountain of Resurrection, the recovery of his injuries was much slower. He didn't know how long it would take to recover. The crystal dragon was absorbing the power of the crystal mine in the dragon inscription to heal. Suddenly, a crystal man came to report, "There seems to be a problem with the transmission hall of the crystal mine." Jacob frowned. "Is it that Rummenig who is playing tricks? This ant touched the dragon inscription and was captured by me. Seeing that he is a mechanic master, I temporarily spared his life and forced him to preside over and expand the transmission magic circle. This way, I can save a lot of energy. Of course, as long as the transmission of the crystal mine is almost done in the future, the crystal dragon won't let Rummenig live." Jacob left the healing cave and came to the hall of the crystal mine transmission. He saw that the space entrance that was originally absorbing the crystal mine didn't continue to swallow, for some reason. Instead, it started to spit out the crystal mine. The wisdom of the crystal puppets was limited. They didn't know what to do, so they all stood there blankly. Jacob was taken aback and hurried forward. At a glance, he found that the surrounding magic circle was strange. These magic circles were profound and mysterious. They seemed to have the shadow of dragon inscription, and the level was very high. Even Jacob, who was proficient in this, couldn't match them. Jacob's face suddenly changed. Even if he couldn't understand the true meaning of these inscriptions or magic circles, he could guess that this original one-way transmission circle had been changed to two-way. It was now flowing backward toward this hall. If this continued, not only those crystal mines, but even the treasures that he had accumulated would all flow backward. Chapter 430. Jacob made a prompt decision and punched the magic circle. However, under this demon overlord level punch, the magic circle only trembled slightly and was not destroyed. Affected by this power, the speed of the reverse crystal mine became faster instead. "Rummenig!" Jacob clenched his teeth and shouted. His sharp eyes shot at Rummenig next to the magic circle. "I didn't expect this ant to have such profound knowledge. It was just that the crystal dragon didn't understand. This mechanic master did this under my nose. Does he want to die? If so, why did he succumb to the power at the beginning? Rummenigge smiled slightly and looked calm. Why, Sir Jacob, are you calling me? The crystal dragon's pupils shrank slightly, and his anger was restrained instead. This ant has been calling me sir, but I don't know my name. Why did he suddenly call out my real name? Besides, that calm demeanor isn't the temperament that an ant should have. Jacob wasn't a reckless person, so he didn't rush to stop the magic circle or make a move. He secretly ordered the crystal men to surround Rummenigge. Who are you? I'm a friend that you once had a friendship with. However, compared with another friend, your friendship is deeper. I don't remember having a friend like you. Jacob coldly snorted, and the crystal puppets suddenly launched an attack. They all rushed forward, and before they even got close, their bodies suddenly flashed with a high-speed brilliance, as if they were living runes. If one took a closer look, they would see that countless sharp energies were cutting at high speed. In just an instant, not only the dozen crystal puppets that rushed up, but even all the crystal men nearby were turned into scattered pieces at the same time. Meanwhile, the miners nearby were not injured at all. They fled out one after another, and the entire hall was empty in an instant. True. Destructive or a blow, AoE attack skill. Within a radius of 30 meters, all hostile creatures were instantly sliced by the high-speed sword chi. It requires an additional 1,000 auras. Can choose to exempt the target. Limited to 1 use per hour. The crystal men were at a disadvantage in speed, but their defense and magic defense were quite outstanding. Unexpectedly, they were turned into powder in an instant. The crystal dragon's eyes fell on the faintly glowing palm of Rummenigge, and the fierceness in his eyes was even more intense. Although he didn't see how the opponent performed the special skill just now, judging from the explosive power, it was only at the Demon Emperor level. Despite sacrificing a large number of crystal puppets, Jacob had already probed the opponent's strength level. He was confident in his heart. With a grim smile, he reached out to grab Rummenigge. Suddenly, Jacob felt a strong sense of danger in his heart. His entire arm became translucent, and he used all his strength. At this time, a hand appeared out of thin air, and the translucent hand that exuded a terrifying aura shook. Almost at the same time, the entire hall seemed to tremble. Jacob retracted his arm, and the crystal-clear palm seemed to be trembling slightly. It was not only the arm that was trembling. The crystal dragon's incredulous eyes fell on a person who appeared next to Rummenigge, and the corner of his eyes began to twitch. This man had black hair and brownish-yellow skin. When he grinned, his sharp teeth were revealed. Why? Don't you recognize your old friend? Pa! Paglio! Jacob's trembling voice was mixed with hatred and fear. Rummenigge's face also changed into a familiar face which made the crystal dragon extremely shocked. You are Arthur! If the person the crystal dragon hated the most was Master Arthur, who cheated him and stole the Fountain of Resurrection and the ancient rune slate, then the person he feared the most was the poison dragon Paglio, who severely injured him 2,000 years ago. He was even more powerful than Catherine the Great. Unexpectedly, these two people appeared in front of me at the same time today. By the way, the man named Arthur, didn't he crush his heart because of that woman, and he died? Why is he still alive and kicking in front of me? I remember that Arthur once pointed out the hatred from 2,000 years ago, and even mentioned the name of Paglio. It turns out that he is really in cahoots with the damn poison dragon. I'd like to see how much you, the crystal dragon who only knows how to escape, have grown after 2,000 years. Grow your eggshell. Jacob stepped back slowly and scolded in his heart. 2,000 years ago, Paglio's power was better than him, especially the terrifying power that was mixed with poison. It could actually destroy the crystal body that was not afraid of magic and negative states. Not to mention that he was now in a weak state where his old injuries had not healed, and new injuries were added. His strength did not increase but decreased instead. He was definitely not Paglio's opponent. Want to run? Paglio saw through Jacob's intention at a glance and grinned. Don't you want the treasure? These words made Jacob stop in his tracks. He almost wanted to vomit blood. His eyes fell on the space entrance that was continuously spitting out crystal ores. Now, the space entrance was not only spitting out crystal ores, but also finished black crystal coins. There were even more wealth and treasures behind it. These were the accumulation of his many years of painstaking efforts. Arthur waved his hands and seemed to cast some kind of space magic, swallowing the huge amount of treasures that flowed out in an instant. He was still making sarcastic remarks. Paglio, it seems that his treasures are no less than yours. Now my space is going to be full again. So troublesome. Jacob shouted angrily and punched at Chinray, who had turned into Arthur. However, a cloud of green gas appeared in an instant, and the countless crystal lights brought out by the distant punch were quickly swallowed up by the green gas. Paglio's voice sounded. Hey, remember to split it 50-50. Don't swallow it all. Jacob tried to destroy the magic array of the entire hall, but this magic array seemed to be strengthened by a strange force. It was difficult to destroy it in a hurry. While he was distracted, he was hit by Paglio's punch. This punch was even stronger than the one from 2,000 years ago. Especially the familiar and chilling poison invaded the crystal body, causing a lot of damage in an instant. The pain was secondary. The key was that the crystal dragon was scared out of his wits by the pursuit of the past, and almost lost his fighting spirit. Although Jacob's heart was bleeding when he saw the treasures being plundered, it was not as important as his own life. The crystal dragon gritted his teeth and flew out like lightning. Paglio did not intercept him but just followed behind like a shadow. It didn't take long for the crystal dragon to escape from the mine. At this time, the purple moon was already in the sky. Jacob leaped and flew into the night sky. In comparison, his flying ability was slightly better than Paglio's. This was also the main reason why he could escape in the past. However, as soon as he soared into the air, he immediately felt something strange. According to his flying speed, he should have flown a few kilometers in an instant, but the surrounding space seemed to be moving with him. This leap only opened up a distance of about 10 meters. Jacob was taken aback. He stretched his body in the air and blasted out, but the result was still the same. The space around the crystal lair seemed to be set up with a strange restraining force. The breath of this force was somewhat familiar to Jacob, but he had no time to think because Paglio's attack had arrived instantly. It was still the same fierce and unscrupulous attack method, but the power was even stranger and more violent than 2,000 years ago. Putting aside the lightning element attack from time to time, his speed, which had always been a relative shortcoming, had actually increased a lot. Sometimes, his punch force would suddenly increase, making it hard for Jacob to resist. In terms of strength, although Jacob's injury had not healed, the poison dragon had been sealed for 2,000 years. Despite the effect of the black potion, his strength was still not growing normally. The gap between the two was not very big, but Jacob almost died in the hands of Paglio back then. Now that he was facing his old enemy again, fear had caused him to lose his fighting spirit, and his combat power was greatly reduced. In addition, the poison dragon still had artifacts like Overlord armor and thunderous sound. For a moment, Jacob was suppressed into an absolute disadvantage. He almost had no power to fight back. Bang! Jacob and Paglio punched each other, and he was blasted away by the double damage attribute of the thunderous sound. A lot of cracks appeared on his crystal-clear arm. When he approached the edge of the strange space, the speed of flying backwards slowed down again as if it was an endless quagmire. This strange quagmire seemed to have enveloped the entire area of the crystal lair, making it impossible for him to use his advantage in speed to escape. Jacob finally remembered that the aura of this strange space was actually similar to the power of those ancient rune slates. Could it be that crazy woman? No way! I heard that after Paglio and the crazy woman joined forces to defeat me and Rainieri, they immediately turned against each other. The crazy woman even chased the poison dragon everywhere. With that woman's terrifying temperament, how could she join forces with Paglio again? However, apart from that crazy woman, Who else could lay down the power of this ancient runes? However, Jacob couldn't care so much now. The enemy was in front of him. Any mistake would be life-threatening. He immediately yelled, and the cracks on his body healed. He revealed his true form. This was a huge crystal dragon with a length of more than 10 meters with wings on its back. Its body was crystal clear and exuded amazing power. The crystal dragon trembled all over, and the crystal light scattered all over its body. Countless huge crystal pillars broke out of the ground, refracting the moonlight into countless purple, which looked mysterious and magnificent. Crystal territory. And it was the strongest territory that was cast in the dragon form. Looking at this posture, the crystal dragon was going to go all out in one throw. Pyglaio was waiting for this move. His body also changed, turning into a giant dragon that was even larger than Jacob. The scales were yellowish-brown, and there were fin-like things on both cheeks. There was a row of short horns on the top of his head. He was wrapped in a layer of black armor, and his dark golden snake eyes glowed with a cold light. The poison dragon hissed at the 2 moons in the sky. The light of the 2 moons suddenly dimmed, and a large amount of green mist filled the surroundings. Even the moonlight refracted by the crystal territory became a strange green. In the blink of an eye, the entire space became a world of crystal pillars and poisonous mist. Generally speaking, the power of territory would interfere with each other. Many powerhouses' usual fighting method was to enter the opponent's territory, then find a flaw similar to the key point, then burst out their territory power in one fell swoop to erode or disintegrate the opponent's territory. The poison dragon was now directly casting his territory to fight against the opponent head-on. This would consume more power, but once he won, he could cause a stronger blow and damage to the crystal dragon. Facing the enemy from 2,000 years ago, Pyglaio was determined to win today's battle. Chapter 431. Outside the Crystal Valley, Master Rummenigge was under the strict protection of the army. He looked at the changing sky of the valley in the distance. Like many soldiers, he couldn't help but look surprised. Even at such a distance, when they heard the crisscrossing neighs from afar, they still felt a chill down their spines. The war horses with sharp senses all revealed expressions of fear. If it weren't for the fact that they were well trained and the soldiers were controlling them, they would have already fled. In the distant sky, purple and green lights were constantly changing. The ground trembled faintly. Even the magic circle couldn't stop it. One could imagine the intensity of the battle. But these troops didn't act rashly. They just held the line of defense outside the Crystal Valley. Because when someone handed Master Rummenigge to them a few days ago, they had already shown the magic badge representing the Bloody Vine Flower Estate Lord. They ordered the army to protect the Master and hold the position. No matter what happened, they were not allowed to act rashly. They also prohibited all outsiders from entering and exiting, including Master Rummenigge himself. In fact, what these troops saw was only the battle phenomenon after the power of the ancient runes was imprisoned. Of course, there was still a considerable gap between Chinre's ancient runes' power and Rala's. If Rala arranged it, the effect would definitely be different. It was just that the dark moon was too far away from the Crystal Valley, and it took too long to go back and forth. Moreover, the space channel established by Rala required quite complicated time and materials, so this time Chinre did not alarm the fairy Miss Long who guarded the dark moon. In the Crystal Valley, many of the crystal pillars that seemed to connect the sky and the earth had broken, and some were broken. The crystal dragon was panting heavily. His huge body was full of cracks, and the crystal scales were scattered all over the ground. Opposite him was Pyglaio in black armor. His body was emitting a faint green mist. Although he was also panting slightly, he was much calmer. There were many scratches caused by claws on the black armor, but it was not damaged. There were only some bloodstains on the insignificant parts that the armor could not protect. The crystal dragon's translucent cyan snake pupils stared at the black armor on Pyglaio. Most dragons were collectors and connoisseurs of treasures. The crystal dragon could conclude that this armor was by no means an ordinary legendary grade equipment. It was not even the best elite legendary equipment. Could it be an artifact? At the very least, it was a quasi-divine artifact? Very likely. This armor was unusually sturdy, and after transforming into a dragon, it could cover the entire body. The faint light that it emitted seemed to have a special effect that weakened the enemy. Fortunately, the crystal body was immune to this annoying skill, or else Jacob's injuries would be even more serious. After not seeing each other for 2,000 years, this terrifying poison dragon actually got a defensive artifact that dragons could equip. He was stronger than him. The strange poison could restrain the crystal physique. And there was even a divine artifact. It's too unfair. A strong sense of frustration surged in the crystal dragon's heart. The poison dragon seized the opportunity and smashed the crystal dragon's left wing with a powerful tail whip. Under the strange power of the territory, the broken wing instantly recovered to the form of a skeleton. It was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye, but as a price, the crystal pillars shattered again. The territory power was suppressed even lower. Many crystal pillars disintegrated into liquid under the action of the green mist, and they quickly evaporated into new mist, filling the entire space. The sharp reduction of the territory power and serious injuries made the crystal dragon shaky. He almost couldn't hold on anymore. I can't. If this goes on, I will definitely be killed by the enemy. At this point, I can only use that thing. Although I can't control the true power of that thing, and I will pay a considerable price, it is the only hope to defeat the opponent. I don't care anymore. The crystal dragon gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Piglio had always had the upper hand, so he felt carefree. As he was about to take advantage of the victory to pursue, he saw the crystal dragon's pupils suddenly turn blood red. There was a warning sign of danger in his heart. The poison dragon didn't dare to relax. He immediately gathered his strength and waited. The crystal dragon spat out a pale red bead from its mouth, and it instantly bloomed into a strange flower shape. The color also changed from pale red to blood red. Even the poison territory couldn't cover the light of the bead. The two moons seen in the space were affected by it, changing from the original purple and green to completely blood red. As the moonlight shone, the strange red flower suddenly split apart. A red mist with a powerful breath covered the surface of the crystal dragon's body. It began to twist and expand rapidly, and there was a mutation. The crystal dragon's entire body had doubled in size and appeared to be stronger. Its head had also turned into 3, making it look like a 9-headed snake. Its entire body was covered with sharp and huge bone spurs, and its body would occasionally emit a strange flame. Wherever the flame went, it would engulf the green mist of the toxic green domain. The crystal dragon felt that his body was full of unprecedented violent power. With a wave of his hand, he actually caused the ground that contained the power of the ancient runes barrier to crack. His confidence was greatly boosted as he shouted, "Piglio! Your death is here!" Piglio's combat experience was extremely rich. He noticed that the state of the crystal dragon was abnormal. This should be the final killer move, and there must be something wrong with it. Otherwise, the crystal dragon would have used this power long ago. "Poor guy, it's just a power that doesn't belong to you," Piglio said disdainfully. It was more of a psychological tactic. "Humph! Didn't you also rely on that artifact armor? Victory or defeat is the key to everything." Jacob's voice also became hoarse and weird, revealing a strange feeling. "Want to win me?" Piglio sneered. "Just by relying on the power that even you can't control?" Jacob didn't talk any more nonsense. The blood-red flame on his body blazed, and he pounced toward Piglio. His speed was much faster than before, and his attack and defense power had also been greatly improved. It seemed that the effect of this mutation was very obvious. With the help of the artifact, thunderous sound, and overlord armor, Piglio resisted Jacob's huge pressure with all his strength. Although the previous situation was reversed, Jacob only had the upper hand due to his tight defense and long endurance. He couldn't turn the advantage into a victory for a while. Although the situation remained stable, only the poison dragon understood the huge pressure he encountered. If it weren't for the Overlord armor's super strong defense and magical attributes of weakening and absorbing damage into physical strength, he would have been defeated long ago with his previous strength. However, there was definitely a problem with Jacob's situation. It was likely that he couldn't last long, so he had to hold on to these waves of attacks. When the temporary mutated power weakened, it would be the time to launch a counterattack to defeat the enemy. However, the effectiveness of Jacob's mutation seemed to exceed Paglio's expectations. The violent and manic power seemed to be endless. That kind of flame could not only devour toxins, but it also carried strange damage. Fortunately, he had the protection of the Overlord armor. Otherwise, he would have suffered serious injuries. At the same time, Paglio noticed that when his poison territory was devoured, Jacob's crystal territory was also disintegrating automatically. It seemed that there was some kind of incompatibility between this mutated power and the original body. He couldn't help but think of an idea. The originally restrained Overlord armor was immediately activated and hit Jacob with a punch. The thunder and lightning additional attribute of thunderous sound appeared. Jacob's movements suddenly paused as if he was paralyzed by the thunder and lightning. Paglio then followed up with 2 lightning-fast punches, hitting the same place. The crystal dragon groaned and staggered back. His body turned green, and the flames became a little weaker. However, they returned to normal in an instant. Paglio's mind was clear. The red bead made Jacob's power soar. Paglio's poison fist technique that transferred poison by force also couldn't play a role because the force was eliminated. However, due to the conflict with his own attributes, it made Jacob's crystal body ineffective. That was the biggest advantage of being immune to magic power was lost. Therefore, he was affected by the reduction of Overlord armor. Ordinary thunder and poison also played a miraculous effect one after another. As soon as he thought of this, Paglio immediately began to change his tactics. He withdrew the power of the territory and didn't fight recklessly. He mainly used poison skill. Coupled with the special effect of Overlord armor and the additional thunder and lightning attack, he gradually turned the situation around. The crystal dragon was also suffering at the moment. He had only tried the power of the red bead a little before, and he was already secretly vigilant of that kind of danger. It was the first time that he used the red bead with all his might. Although the burst of strange power was beyond imagination, and he managed to turn the situation around for a while, there was a strange power in the red bead that seemed to completely transform him into a creature that was separated from his original consciousness. This feeling caused the crystal dragon to panic. It could be said that while Jacob was fighting with Paglio, he was also fighting with himself. Bang! The distracted crystal dragon was punched by Paglio again, but Paglio was pushed back by a more violent force instead. The crystal dragon's body distorted violently again as if it was about to swell again. The crystal dragon let out a roar that was almost like a miserable howl, and its bloody eyes shone brightly. The swollen and twisted flesh and bone spurs actually separated from its body, and a red flower-shaped core appeared faintly in it, flashing with turbulent light. Then, all these things burst apart. When the red bead flashed rapidly, Paglio knew that it was bad. He instantly returned to his human form, crossed his hands in front of him, and put on a defensive posture. However, the explosive force was extremely powerful. Although he turned into a human form to greatly reduce the area of impact, he was still blown far away. Even in the area of the crystal layer that was sealed by the power of ancient runes, there was a violent shock. There were huge cracks visible to the naked eye in the space. In fact, the one who suffered the most was Jacob himself. At the critical moment just now, he tried his best to get rid of the control of the red bead and finally regained consciousness. However, as the one who bore the brunt of the explosion, he was also attacked by the poison dragon's powerful attack previously, which made his injuries extremely serious. Coupled with some sequelae of using the red bead, he almost collapsed on the spot. After all, the crystal dragon was a powerhouse of the peak stage of the demon overlord. With a roar, he didn't care about the abnormalities and injuries of his body. He used his last strength to flap his wings and rushed out of the space crack. After breaking free from the shackles of the ancient runes, he flew all the way and disappeared into the night sky instantly. After the explosion, Piglio pushed away the smoke and found that Jacob was nowhere to be found. There were actually tiny cracks on the Overlord armor. He couldn't help but be shocked. Fortunately, this armor had a self-healing effect, but it couldn't be used again in a short time. In this battle, Jacob was lucky to escape again, but he was seriously injured. Judging from the strangeness of the red bead, it seemed that he would suffer some kind of terrifying backlash. In a short time, his combat power should be greatly reduced, and he wouldn't come out again. The whole battle process was more intense than Piglio expected. What impressed him the most was the red bead that could induce some kind of terrifying mutation. What is this thing? By the way, I don't know how is the progress of the cunning human. When he thought of the crystal dragon's wealth, the dragon's eyes suddenly lit up, and the original pain became insignificant. Piglio didn't know that just when Jacob mutated just now, the space entrance of the reverse transmission in a hall somewhere underground had completed its operation. In other words, Shinrei had completed the receipt of all the wealth of the crystal dragon. This was an astonishing amount of wealth. The value was even above the treasures of Piglio's silent night wetland. After all, the poison dragon was 2,000 years behind in collecting wealth. On that day, after Shinrei informed Piglio, he transformed into Rummenig and began to quietly lead the miners to modify the magic circle in the hall. In order to prevent being seen through, he didn't use dragon inscription, but he mainly combined the ancient runes with the magic circle. However, the crystal dragon obviously didn't take the ant, Rummenig, seriously. He didn't even check it once. Shinrei eliminated the remaining crystal men and placed the miners in a safe cave. Then, he eliminated the dragon inscription laid by the crystal dragon step by step. The battle above was not something that he could intervene in with his current strength. If he appeared rashly, he would become a burden to Piglio instead. Just when he came to the fork in the road where he first met the crystal men, he suddenly felt a strong sensation in his heart. It seemed that the ancient rune's breath suddenly became 10 times stronger. No, not only the ancient runes, but also a special breath of power that seemed to be calling him faintly. Perhaps the original target of this power's summoning was not him, but he clearly felt this summoning now. In other words, that power had already noticed Shinrei. Involuntarily, Shinrei began to walk toward the passage below. Along the way, he could feel that strange breath from time to time. It seemed to have a strong temptation. Unknowingly, he came to a place. This place seemed to be under the crystal mine, but it also seemed to be a separate space that he entered through a certain underground passage. If it weren't for the sudden increase in the ancient rune's breath, if he didn't discover this temptation, he probably couldn't enter this place even if he searched the entire underground. What he saw was a blood-red color. It was actually magma, but the color gave people a terrifying feeling as if it was a blazing blood river. The entire space was a volcano-like cave. The blood-red heat distorted the scenery in sight. There was boiling magma everywhere, and only a narrow and dangerous passage led to the unknown depths ahead. The terrifying heat made Shinrei have to use his power to protect himself. He was still sweating profusely as if he was in the furnace of hell. Shinrei carefully stepped on the black rock under his feet and walked forward step by step. After walking for a while, at a corner, he found that there was actually something special in the magma. It was floating and sinking, but it didn't melt as if it was produced by the magma. This was a strange flower that was about the size of 2 fists. Unlike the blood-red magma, it exuded a strange beauty in the more enchanting red. Chapter 432. Shinrei just glanced at the strange flower in the magma, and he couldn't move his eyes away. Suddenly, he felt that everything around him became quiet. He could clearly hear his abnormal breathing. The terrifying high temperature, steaming magma, and unknown dangers were all left behind. It was as if the focus of the entire space was concentrated on this strange flower. Shinrei felt that his mind was completely attracted by this strange flower. He knew that something was wrong. He wanted to get rid of this attraction, but he couldn't extricate himself. Not only that, even his soul felt restless as if it was about to leave his body. After all, Chunrui had experienced the test of refined mind, so he immediately converged his mind. Like a leaf in a huge wave, he let the strange and powerful spirit power surge. He just guarded his little bit of clarity, drifting with the wind without any effort. Although he was in a stormy sea, his mind was getting firmer and firmer. Seeing that he was about to get rid of the strange power of the flower, the surrounding temperature suddenly rose in the blink of an eye. The terrifying heat wrapped Chunrui from all directions. The magma that was originally relatively calm was tumbling and roaring like a raging wave. The boiling magma splashed on Chunrui's body, emitting green smoke. Fortunately, he had the mystic jade armor to protect his body, but his arm was hit a little. The heart-wrenching pain made him wake up suddenly. This is not an illusion. A blue translucent protective shield immediately appeared on Chunrui's body, blocking the attack of the magma. He rose into the air and quickly flew back the way he came. However, the surrounding scene seemed to have changed. There was no way out or retreat, just an endless boiling sea of blood. Ka! The protective shield couldn't withstand the invisible heat, and cracks appeared. It only lasted for 2 seconds before collapsing. As soon as the protective shield was broken, Chunrui immediately felt that there was a special breath in the terrifying high temperature, and it was getting stronger and stronger. The pressure it brought was even greater than the temperature and damage of the magma. Destruction. Destruction of the world. Endless and powerful destructive breath. It was just like the demigod territory space that he faced in the Rainbow Valley last time. However, there were differences between the two. The most obvious difference was that the destructive aura emitted by the sea of blood was 100 times thicker than that of the space domain. Moreover, it was getting stronger and stronger. Back then, it was only a trace of the power of a demigod's domain. Now, what was the equivalent of? Chunrui didn't have the time to think. He didn't even have the time to cast the Stargate. In the blink of an eye, he would be completely engulfed by the destructive aura. Chunrui activated a type of power almost instinctively. To be precise, it was not a type of power, but a special state that was mixed with comprehension. A trace of red suddenly appeared in his eyes. In an instant, he seemed to have become a part of the destructive aura and fused with it. Although the destructive aura was extremely powerful and could destroy everything within it, it could not destroy him. Not only that, but the destructive power of the blood sea seemed to be influenced by the destructive power that Chunrui had comprehended at this time. All of it surged into his body, not invading but gathering, as if his body was some kind of origin of destruction. The turbulent destructive power of the blood sea became a lot fainter under this incredible devouring. The influx of a large amount of destructive aura made Chunrui's power aura seem to have changed, and the red in his eyes became more intense. At this time, there seemed to be a pair of eyes in the destructive power of the lava that fell on him. The invisible gaze actually affected Chunrui's mysterious state of mind at this moment. With a sudden jolt, the red in his eyes immediately faded, and he instinctively recovered. He felt that the destructive aura around him had weakened. Without hesitation, he immediately cast the skill of the Stargate. A flashing blue light door appeared. In the sound of a sonic boom, Chunrui's figure disappeared instantly, and the oncoming lava hit nothing but air. There seemed to be a low roar coming from somewhere in the endless depths. In the Crystal Valley, a door appeared in the air. Chunrui's figure blasted out. This was the star point he set on the ground. After landing lightly on the ground, recalling the dangerous scene just now, the feeling of stepping on the ground finally made him feel a little relieved. Piglio's voice came from the side. "Hey, you came at the right time. Jacob's treasures are in your hands, right? Hurry up and divide the loot." It turned out that when Chunrui came out of the Stargate, it happened to be when the Poison Dragon defeated the Crystal Dragon, but Piglio still felt a little guilty. Master Poison Dragon once patted his chest and guaranteed that as long as humans set up the magic circle to prevent the Crystal Dragon from escaping, they would definitely be able to take down Jacob. As a result, he almost failed miserably, then he let Jacob escape again. His bragging was really blown up. Humans make mistakes, and dragons make mistakes too. No matter what, the success or failure is nothing. The treasures are the most important. Dividing the loot is overwhelming. Shenrui was still in a state of shock. How could he have the mood to think about the treasure? As he was about to reply angrily, he heard a hint of surprise in Paglia's voice. "What are you holding in your hand?" Shenrui looked subconsciously. He didn't know when he was holding something in his hand. It was a flower. The material was like a crystal carving, but it was natural without any craftsmanship. It was just that the blood-red color gave people a more bewitching feeling. Shenrui's face changed suddenly. "It's actually this flower." When did Paglio also frown? "This flower seems to be similar to the one Jacob just cast." After a while, the two people who were talking finally understood the accident encountered by each other. They looked at this flower with a little more vigilance. It can induce the mutation of a powerhouse like the crystal dragon, and it also grows in some kind of lava that exudes a terrifying power of destruction. It's definitely not an ordinary magic plant. Paglio didn't have the mood to think about the treasure anymore. He pondered and said, "The terrifying place you said is in this underground? Let's go and explore it now." Shenrui thought for a moment and nodded. Both of them were bold people, but they still had to make preparations. Shenrui immediately sorted out 2 sets of equipment that increased fire defense and spirit defense. Equipment matching required considerable knowledge. Not every piece of equipment worn on the body could exert all attributes. If the matching was not appropriate, it would restrict and offset each other, and the maximum ability couldn't be exerted. Fortunately, Overlord Armor and Mystic Jade Armor were artifacts of the Super System. There was no conflict with other equipment, so soon, the fully armed Shenrui and Paglio appeared in the underground of the crystal mineral vein again. "Strange, there should be an entrance here." Shenrui looked at the position where he sensed the ancient runes breathed last time in confusion. It was originally a crossroad, and one could reach the mysterious Blood Sea step by step by going down, but at this time, the crossroad became a 3-way road. The downward passage actually disappeared into thin air. It wasn't blocked or collapsed, but it just disappeared like that. There were no artificial traces, and even the ancient rune's breath couldn't be felt. If it weren't for the strange flower that was still stored in the storage warehouse, Shenrui would think that what he experienced was an illusion. The poison dragon did not question his memory, but he looked solemn. "According to the encounter you said, I had already defeated Jacob on the ground at that time, but I didn't feel anything special. What you entered should be an independent space. Even the disappeared path is part of the space's camouflage. If this space is controlled by someone, and Jacob also mutated into that form because of the strange flower, then the strength of this person, I'm afraid it has already exceeded the ordinary category." Shenrui was secretly shocked. The ordinary category mentioned by the poison dragon refers to the highest level of power generally recognized by the demon realm. In other words, this person, who may control the Blood Sea space, has surpassed the demon overlord level. At least demigod level? Just like the powerhouse who sealed Paglio back then? Thinking of the eyes that once peeped into his consciousness, Shenrui couldn't help but shudder. Is it an illusion? Or, perhaps as Paglio said, the manipulator has some concerns. Otherwise, even if I and Paglio join forces to break in, it will be difficult to escape. I remember the last time I was in the Rainbow Valley, I couldn't use the Star Gate in the demigod territory. It was pure luck that I escaped this time. I believe that if I encounter it again, the other party will not give me the opportunity to use the same trick again. However, why did that flower appear in my hands? Shenrui's memory in this regard was a bit vague. He only remembered vaguely absorbing the power of destruction, then he escaped. He didn't know if he picked it beforehand or someone deliberately gave it to him. As for Jacob, he had been living in the Crystal Valley for many years. He had been using the crystal mine to heal and enhance his strength. He should have gotten this kind of flower by chance. Judging from the crystal lair he built above the crystal mine, his encounter might be a little different from Shenrui's. It was not as dangerous. Shinrui put away the thoughts in his mind and returned to the ground with the poison dragon. Since it was the current situation, it was meaningless for him and Paglio to continue exploring. Now that Jacob had escaped, even if the mysterious space opened another entrance again, I believe it would be impossible for those ordinary miners to detect it. This crystal mine should be able to resume normal operation. Master Rummenigge returned safely, and he had successfully completed Crawford's entrustment. I will first order the army to escort Master Rummenigge, then I will go north across the Black Iron Mountain range to the Bloody Empire to find fertile Yuan soil. Do you want me to go with you? No need, you need to continue to protect the Jia sisters and Kia secretly. By the way, you are knowledgeable. Do you have any special impression of that strange flower? The origin of that strange flower is very mysterious. I haven't seen it before. Why don't you bring it back to your madwoman? Rala to study it? Paglio changed his title temporarily. I will rush back to the Bloody Vine Flower City, but before that, we should talk about the important business. Oh? Don't give that damn expression! Master Poison Dragon was not in a good mood when he saw the signature expression of this inheritance from a certain lady. Do you want to take the treasure alone? What? Greedy guy, still pretending to be stupid, I will fight with you. As the Poison Dragon was about to pounce on him, he saw a crystal light flying over. It turned out to be a very delicate transparent crystal chandelier. With just a glance, the dragons who were good at treasure appraisal had already recognized that this lamp was made of precious snowflake light crystal. It was extremely precious. Shinrui nodded and spat out 2 words in Master Poison Dragon's touched eyes. 370. You damned vampire! You even dare to suck the blood of a dragon! Paglio almost dropped the crystal lamp in his hand to the ground. It's me who did the hard work today. I will take 70%, and you take 30%. I think Ms. Betty will be very excited to get a huge amount of new wealth. Shameless guy. I will take another step back. I take 60%, and you take 40%. Not even 10% less. Amidst the meaningless bargaining, the figures of the 2 companions gradually disappeared into the quiet night. Chapter 433. Watching Shinrui leave on the wyvern, Paglio took out a bottle of emerald jade wine, took a sip, and spat out a mouthful of hot air satisfactorily. Sure enough, the wine made by little Betty is the most fragrant. Sharing the booty with a cunning human vampire is just a change in numbers in the end. Anyway, Master Poison Dragon's private money is deposited with the human vampire, so I don't know if I can get it back by then. However, these don't seem to matter. What's important is that Master Paglio isn't fighting alone now. He has a cunning human, little Betty, who can barely be regarded as the legal wife, and several other credible accomplices. He felt that in these tens of thousands of years of life and memories, it seems that only this year or so has become particularly clear. Although, when he was born, he only saw the eggshell. By the way, I have to rush back as soon as possible to protect that guy's woman. Paglio drank the bottle of wine in one gulp and rose into the air. The huge black shadow flapped its wings and instantly became a small black dot, then it disappeared into the night. Shinrui rode the wyvern and flew all the way. Under the guidance of the magic map, it took him a full 4 days to cross the Black Iron Mountain range and come to the territory of the Bloody Empire. Despite the Black Iron Mountain range, the Bloody Empire still built Molo Fortress on the other end of the Black Iron Mountain range. It was unknown if it was to guard against the Shadow Empire or for other purposes. Shinrui successfully passed the fortress as a mechanic apprentice, Richard. Because at the mechanic level, the badges obtained were unique. They could show the name through the special inspection props of the Mechanic Association. If he was not careful, it would be quite bad to expose the identity of the missing Demon Realm genius master Arthur. Shinrui's goal was the fertile Yuan soil and mountains sectored in the far north that Earth Elemental King Moore mentioned. This treasure could not only help Moore advance to the peak stage of the Demon Overlord, but it was also one of the missing materials for making the artifact wand, Secret Shadow. Secret Shadow could double the power and casting speed of all spells, and it was also immune to soul attacks. It also had Limit Break Domain, which had a chance to ignore the enemy's magic defense or immunity. It was the strongest weapon tailor-made for Rala. However, so far, the Dark Shadow, who had infiltrated the Bloody Empire, had not found the whereabouts of Mountain Secret, as if no one knew about this mountain at all. Of course, Shadow had only been established for a short period of time. At present, their main focus was on the country of the fallen Angel Empire. In the other two empires, whether it was manpower or strength, they were quite lacking. At most, they could only grasp some relatively ordinary information. There was no way to access some core confidential information. Since he came to the Bloody Empire, he naturally didn't want to return empty-handed. Shinrui thought about it, and decided to go to the Bloody Empire capital first to see if he could find any useful information. If there was really no gain, it would not be too late to try to explore north. Shinrui passed through Moro Fortress and came to a small town. He took the carriage all the way west. A few days later, he finally arrived at Town Essador, the place that he had to pass to the capital. Town Essador was originally unknown. After the war thousands of years ago, it became a well-known place in the demon realm. At that time, the Bloody Empire army of the Mammon royal family invaded the Wrath Empire of the Sammo royal family. They had been invincible until then. At this last tiny place to the capital, they encountered tenfold resistance that was more than the previous fortress or city. The first general of the Wrath royal family, Sirai, led 10,000 old, weak, sick, and disabled people to miraculously block the onslaught of 300,000 Bloody Empire's main force. However, due to the lack of backup, the entire army was killed after 10 days. Although the Bloody Empire army took down Town Essador, they paid 4 times the price of the enemy. Then, the Bloody Empire army marched all the way and broke into the capital. The emperor burned himself to death, and the Wrath Empire became history. However, General Sirai won the respect of everyone, including the enemy. The Bloody Empire emperor even personally made a bronze statue for him. In memory of Sirai's bravery, the later generations composed the Song of Essador, which was still passed down to this day. Last time, when the Blue Lava Estate was facing a desperate situation, Athena sang this song to Shinrui. In the desolation and sadness, there was persistence and unyielding, which represented her state of mind at that time. That scene, just like the confession in the flames at the bottom of Mountain Shillong, had been deeply engraved in Shinrui's heart. Athena wasn't as charming as Kia. Her strength and knowledge weren't as good as Rala. She wasn't as beautiful as Jia or Catherine. However, there was no doubt that she was her, the unique her, and also the woman he loved the most. Then I'll continue to become stronger, not for power, not for fame and fortune, just to protect. Shinrui took a deep breath, and his eyes looked more determined. The carriage didn't go directly to the station, but it stopped at the entrance of Essador's town. The people in the carriage walked down one after another. It wasn't because the service was not good, but there were a large number of troops at the entrance of the town checking the population entering the town. There were also several staff responsible for registration. Shinrui was slightly surprised. In the previous town or even the fortress, I didn't have such vigilance. Could it be that something happened? It was his turn to be checked soon. The surrounding soldiers were staring at him, and the registration lich didn't even raise his head. He asked directly, "Name, race, identity, destination." "Richard, Great Demon, Mechanic Apprentice. I plan to go to the capital to take the Mechanic Qualification Assessment." When the lich heard that he was going to take the Mechanic Qualification Assessment, he couldn't help but raise his head and take another look at him. "If you have nothing special to stay here, it's best to go to the capital through Essador as soon as possible." "Why?" Shinrui asked curiously, but the lich waved his hand impatiently, signaling him to pass quickly. Shinrui was suspicious. He followed the person in front and walked all the way into Town Essador. The first thing he saw was a huge bronze statue which was personally cast by the Bloody Empire for Seer Sammo. The statue had a square face with a resolute expression. He wore a broken armor and supported his body with a long sword with a curved blade. It was said that when General Serene died, it was in this posture. He died with grievance and stood still. None of the bloody Empire's soldiers touched his body. They all took a detour with respect. In front of the statue, there were flowers piled up. It seemed that many people came to pay their respects. There were many people coming and going in the town. Besides, Town Essidor's guard force was several times more than the establishment of ordinary towns. There were patrols walking back and forth from time to time. Shinrei wanted to find a tavern to inquire about the news, but all the taverns in the town were closed. Later, he used a little money to learn from an imp that today was the 2370th anniversary of General Serene's death, which was also the day of Essidor. Originally, this anniversary didn't require the army to go to war. However, since the Bloody Empire invaded the Wrath Empire, there were endless resistance forces. The Wrath royal family was the bravest and best at fighting royal family in the demon realm. Although the emperor had fallen, they had never really surrendered. Especially on the anniversary of General Serene's death, many riots in the name of Serene gave the Bloody Empire a huge headache. Every time it happened, the whole country would be under emergency martial law to investigate and search for suspicious people. This situation was maintained until the ascension of the current Bloody Empire's Raisin. Raisin also used bloody suppression at the beginning. It was the little prince, Terrace, who changed all this. More than 100 years ago, Terrace actually persuaded Raisin the Great to invite the Wrath royal family's young patriarch, Gustav, to be the first general of the empire. He named the anniversary of General Serene's death as the Day of Essidor. Every 10 years, a memorial meeting would be organized in the name of the official to allow anyone to come to Town Essidor to mourn the heroic general. Sure enough, after cooperating with this conciliatory policy, the turmoil of the Bloody Empire finally gradually stabilized. Raisin the Great also showed extraordinary courage. He entrusted Gustav with heavy responsibilities and became the first general in the real sense. Shinrei nodded secretly. Terrace's strategy of blocking is not as good as letting is used beautifully. Today happens to be the official memorial meeting held every 10 years. No wonder there are so many troops to maintain order. As for the suspension of the sale of alcohol, it was to show the memory of Serene, and it was to prevent some accidents caused by alcohol. At this moment, many people quickly gathered on the street. Shinrei heard someone whispering, "General Gustav is here! Is it the Wrath royal family of the first general of the empire?" Shinrei followed the crowd curiously and hurriedly walked to the town entrance. He saw a tall and thin man in armor riding a black war horse. Surrounded by a small team of red-armored cavalry, he passed through the checkpoint. Then they dismounted and walked in the direction of Serene's statue. Shinrei's eyesight was excellent. He had already seen Gustav's appearance clearly. He was tall and thin with high eyebrows. His facial features were as sharp as a knife, giving people a cold feeling. "It's him." Shinrei was taken aback. Gustav is none other than the demon overlord powerhouse who followed the Bloody Empire's young Prince Terrace at the Dark Moon auction last time. At this time, Gustav had already walked over here. Many of the onlookers were from the Wrath royal family who came to participate in the memorial. They all bowed to Gustav. Many even followed behind Gustav's guards and followed him to the statue. Shinrei's heart moved, and he also mixed into the advancing crowd. He always had a question in his heart, or a guess. Now he just opened analytical eyes to confirm it. Gustav came to the bronze statue, stopped, took the flowers in the hands of the guards, and placed them under the statue. Then, he knelt on one knee and closed his eyes. Many people behind him also did the same action. The guards did not stop the following crowd. They were probably used to it. Shinrei slowly approached and squeezed to the front of the crowd. He finally entered the effective range of analytical eyes. Race, Wrath royal family. Comprehensive strength assessment, A+S. Physique A+S, strength A+S, spirit B+, A, agility AS. Analysis, fire attribute. Sure enough, the data is exactly the same. The object of this, exactly the same, is the mysterious demon overlord powerhouse who almost killed Shinrei in town Lupin of the Blue Lava Estate, and later gave Athena a pair of legendary grade bracers. Bridget. This can explain why Bridget liked Athena's singing at that time. The Song of Isildur. The first general of the Bloody Empire is actually from the Bloodfall. The water elemental King Lambos once said that the sacrifice of so many lives in town Lupin is not only for the recovery of the dark elemental King Hagel, but also for someone who needs dark power to break through the bottleneck. Dark power. Dark proficiency? Also, break through the bottleneck. Devil fruit? Looking at the Wrath Royal family powerhouse who used the alias Bridget, a new bold guess gradually became clear in Shinrei's heart. At this moment, Gustav had finished mourning. He stood up and suddenly looked back. His gaze was in the direction of Shinrei. It seemed that this demon overlord powerhouse had keenly noticed the gaze behind him. Shinrei was taken aback. After confirming the identity of Bridget, his gaze just now involuntarily carried a hint of hostility. I was actually discovered by Gustav and so many people. This opponent's spirit-sensing ability is amazing. Analytical Eyes shows that Gustav is a strength-type trainer, and his spirit power is only at the Demon Emperor level. Perhaps this is not only the perception of spirit power, but more of a subtle instinctive perception from hundreds of battles. He is indeed a difficult enemy to deal with. With Gustav's gaze, the surrounding people immediately cast their eyes over. Soon, Shinrei was discovered, and became the focus of everyone's attention. A guard immediately grabbed Shinrei. Gustav took a look at Shinrei. "Who are you?" Although this voice is different from Bridget's, the feeling made Shinrei more sure the voice can be changed with some skill or item, just like the true face is concealed, but that intuition will not be wrong. It is him. Shinrei looked extremely nervous. "General, please spare my life. I'm a mechanic apprentice. I'm going to the capital to take the mechanic assessment, and I happen to come here to remember General Reiser. I'm a little curious about the general." Gustav didn't give him a chance to explain and said coldly, "Tell the person behind you not to affect my mood on such a day, otherwise." Shinrei only felt two sharp blade-like lights penetrating his heart. He was indeed a little nervous, and his heart immediately beat violently. It seems that Gustav misunderstood me as some kind of monitor. Gustav, the first general of the Empire, probably doesn't live as well as outsiders think. Shinrei immediately lowered his head and didn't speak again. This was just the right way to divert attention to avoid arousing suspicion. Many disdainful, angry, and hateful gazes were suddenly cast over, making Shinrei feel uncomfortable. "Throw him out of town." Gustav gave an order to the guard. He ignored Shinrei and continued to turn to face the bronze statue. The guard violently grabbed Shinrei's neck and dragged him toward the entrance of the town. Shinrei naturally didn't resist, but he secretly complained about his bad luck. "I just came in here, and I'm going to be thrown out again." "Why don't you throw me toward the exit of the capital?" After Shinrei landed smoothly, a song sounded in the direction of the town. The solemn and sorrowful song of Isildur floated in the sky. It was desolate. Feeling the sorrowful atmosphere, Shinrei's heart was touched as if he was still in Lupin. He couldn't help but slowly close his eyes, just like Bridget that day. Chapter 434. Although the misunderstood episode made Shinrei almost become a street rat, after the storm, the misunderstood apprentice finally passed town Essador and got on the carriage to the capital. The time along the way was the most boring, but since it was a carriage hired separately at the post station, he was the only one in the carriage. It was just right for him to enter the super system to train. What surprised Shinrei was that the super system had undergone some changes recently. Just looking at some data, he should be happy. Title: Star-Lord Evolution Level, 5-star Experience Value, 1% Aura Value, 26. 3 million Comprehensive Strength Assessment. The experience value increased by 1%. Don't underestimate this 1%. It had always been 0. This represented that his fekta had really taken the first crucial step. Calculating, this 1% should have appeared after the battle between Paglio and the Crystal Dragon, which was after the Blood Sea Space incident. He did not train during this time. Could it be related to the perception of the fusion of the power of destruction? Not only had the experience value changed, but the faith crystals in the Tower of Faith had also skyrocketed to more than 2,500. Before coming to the Bloody Empire, there were only more than 900. This increase was still accelerating. 1,000 faith crystals could already cast the strongest 5-star combat technique, Royal Star Transformation. In the future, he could also spend 100,000 faith crystals to use the spiritual link to carry out permanent star-level enhancement. The growth of faith crystals was a very gratifying phenomenon. The reason for such rapid growth was that the population reproduction rate of the blue planet had greatly accelerated. The population had increased a lot, and the number of believers had naturally increased greatly. The time in this galaxy was different from the outside. It had the feeling of one day in the sky is 1,000 years on the ground. Of course, under normal circumstances, it was still relatively stable. However, when Chinrui's perception and encounter had some changes, there would be a corresponding large change. The original 10 faiths were divided into 10 independent pillars of faith. However, what surprised Chinrui was that in addition to the pillar of war created by Shura, new pillars of faith appeared like mushrooms after a rain. Wealth, lust, slaughter, disaster, fear. Shura! Chinrui roared. Shura's figure condensed in the Galaxy Divinity Temple. Chinrui could sense that Shura seemed to have become much stronger. If there was anything different about the face that was identical to Chinrui's, it would be the blood-red color in his eyes. It was like a sea of blood. Chinrui vaguely remembered that when he turned into destruction and devoured the power in that strange space, he seemed to have the same kind of pupils and temperament, not by seeing, but by feeling. Could it be? Do you like these pillars of faith? Before he could speak, Shura's voice rang out. I know what you want to say, but this is not my doing. It's yours. Chinrui was taken aback, only to hear Shura say, the cause of this matter was caused by the powerful aura you devoured that day. As you can see, my power has also increased because of this. As for these pillars of faith, they will appear sooner or later. It's just that this aura has accelerated it a little. Just like this planet illuminated by the light of a star, the front is bright, and the back is dark. No matter which trajectory it rotates to, it can't avoid this. As Shura spoke, he suddenly paused and revealed a strange smile. Do you want to become a god? What do you mean? Chinrui frowned. You can eliminate all the beliefs you don't like from the source of faith, turning these lives into puppets and playthings that only live according to your will and provide a source of the power of faith, just like the creatures in the kingdom of God of the gods. These are some of the things I remember recently. Shura pointed to his head, and his strange smile became wider. Chinrui remembered the Water Elemental King's sentence. All lives are playthings in the eyes of the gods. He was silent. After a while, he replied, I want to have the power equivalent to the gods to protect what I cherish, instead of playing with the will of all creatures. According to a sentence in your memory, if you want to be a whore, don't even think about building a chastity. Shura laughed with disdain and sarcasm. Chinrui calmed down, looked directly at the other self, and asked, You seem to want me to directly erase these sources of faith? Very keen insight. Shura didn't hide it and nodded. It doesn't matter if I tell you. The Tower of Faith represents some kind of mysterious supreme rule. Every time you erase a belief, you will take a step forward in the direction I want. It is also equivalent to a shortcut to the peak power. As long as you go step by step like this, it won't take long for you to truly stand on the peak and look down on everything, just like you are standing in this Galaxy Divinity Temple now. It turns out that there is such a consequence. It seems that the beliefs in the source of faith can't be moved recklessly, otherwise, it will be easy to lose oneself. Chinrui shook his head resolutely and said word by word. I will definitely stand on the true peak, but it will be my own path. Stupid! All the paths in the world lead to the same destination. You taking a detour like this is just digging your own grave. It's useless. No matter what you say, you can't shake my heart. Chinrei suddenly smiled slightly. I'm thinking that you really want me to take the path you arranged for me. You just want me to lose my heart step by step. If I keep insisting on my heart, does it mean that you will eventually fail and disappear completely? Humph! Shura's face sank, and a cold light appeared in his red pupils. You think you're smart? Let me tell you, you have no choice. If you erase these dark beliefs, then I will use the power of the rule to occupy your mind step by step. But if you don't do this, my power will also become stronger and stronger under the dark beliefs. Chinrei was silent, and Shura's voice became more and more arrogant. Perhaps it won't take long before the power of darkness will completely envelop the entire galaxy, and everything will be destroyed in the destruction. Just like in your memory, the Norse myth Ragnarok. Chinrei frowned even tighter. Ragnarok was the most famous myth in Norse. In the story, not only the human world was destroyed, but all the gods and the homes of the gods were also completely destroyed in this tragic and cruel war. The burning of the World Tree even destroyed the entire universe. It wasn't until a long time later, with the rebirth of the World Tree, that a new order began to be re-established. Chinrei couldn't help but ask, why destroy everything? Isn't your purpose to occupy my will or the entire galaxy divinity temple? Occupying your will is also to destroy not only this super system, but also the outside world. This is the meaning of my existence. In the laughter, Shura's shadow became thinner and eventually disappeared without a trace. Chinrei seemed to realize something. He took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. I didn't expect the experience in the Blood Sea space would actually become a new huge test. Shura was by no means an alarmist. Even without the terrifying breath that was devoured, as long as Shura didn't really disappear, this day would come sooner or later. Refined mind is still refined mind. It has nothing to do with realm and strength, but a war between myself and myself. This time, Chinrei didn't hesitate at all. The growth of people was originally a process of constantly fighting with oneself. Perhaps this kind of battle with oneself would continue for a lifetime, but after the end of this war, there should be a real end between him and Shura. This was also the last battle between him and the Shura. Chinrei thought of the strange flower obtained by the Blood Sea. With a thought, he entered the Galaxy Garden. This kind of strange flower should have powerful energy. Why not try planting it in the Galaxy Garden? However, when Chinrei put the Blood Sea flower, temporary name, into the Galaxy Garden, there was no prompt of discovering a new plant. Instead, another prompt appeared. Unknown erosive energy found. If you need to forcibly stay, it will cause adverse effects to the existing plants in the Galaxy Garden, especially aura fruit plants. In serious cases, it can lead to yield reduction or wilting. Erosive energy? Chinrei was shocked. This Blood Sea flower may be similar to the Realm King fruit. It is not a real plant, but its attributes are quite strange. It can actually affect aura fruit plants. Aura was the basic power of the super system, so it was very important. Moreover, the Blood Sea flower couldn't be planted, so it didn't make any sense to put it in the Galaxy Garden. Therefore, Chinrei immediately put the Blood Sea flower back into the storage warehouse. The storage warehouse was very amazing. All different items were isolated by a special space, so they couldn't affect other items. Chinrei didn't care about this strange flower anymore. His mind entered the training ground and began a long training. After a few days of traveling, the carriage arrived at the destination this time, the Bloody Empire. If only one word was used to describe the three capitals concisely, the Fallen Angel Empire could be used as solemn, the Dark Shadow Empire could be used as prosperous, then the Bloody Empire in front of him was austere. Although there were no landmark buildings such as the huge Fallen Angel statue of the Fallen Angel Empire, he could feel the cold and deterrent momentum from the blood-red city wall alone. The criminal law of the Bloody Empire was the harshest compared to the other two empires. Those who disturbed the peace, die. Those who offended the superior, die. Those who disobeyed the superior, die. Although the punishment was cruel, except for some previous rebellions of the Samuel royal family, basically, the people were still relatively law-abiding. They didn't dare to have any unusual movements or resistance. After a long time, they were used to it. The demon realm respected power. This was the deterrent of the top powerhouse. Since the death of the Lord of Midnight Sun 300 years ago, the original candidate for the top powerhouse was still quite controversial. Raisin gathered all the top powerhouses to hold a martial arts conference. As a result, he won 7 games in a row and killed 4 demon overlords of the same level, which terrified all the powerhouses. Then, he became the top powerhouse of the demon realm after the Lord of Midnight Sun without any criticism. Chinrei asked all the way and found a Tess Inn, in the south of the suburb. The proprietress, Tess, was a charming and plump succubus. After taking the purple crystal coins handed over by Chinrei, she said a few words and immediately took him to choose a room personally. She was so intimate as if her whole body was going to stick to him. This shop was actually the stronghold of the Dark Shadow. The person in charge was this succubus, Tess. Chinrei chose a secluded room, and Tess followed him in, but she restrained her charm and saluted respectfully. Among the purple crystal coins that Chinrei handed over just now, there was a special mark. Only the members of the Dark Shadow could recognize it. Coupled with the incision in the conversation, the succubus had confirmed the identity of this little apprentice. There is still no news about Mountain Sacred and Fertile Yuan soil. Yes, sir. Tess lowered her head in shame, looking like she was waiting for punishment. Although she didn't know what this person's identity was, she could only do the word absolute obedience for a person who could take out that kind of mark. Chinrei was also mentally prepared for this. He shook his head and said, "Don't be anxious. The Dark Shadow is just in its infancy now. Let's build up steadily and slowly gain a firm foothold. By the way, is there anything special happening in the capital recently? There are 2 news. First, just the day before yesterday, second Prince Edmund was assassinated. The assassin failed and fled." Seeing that the person did not blame her, Tess was refreshed. She said tirelessly, "The Bloody Empire had always advocated martial arts and respected the supremacy of the strong. The first heir of the royal family was called the Great Prince, but it was not fixed. Every once in a while, several princes would fight to select a new, Great Prince. There were many powerful and talented princes in the Bloody Empire. The most promising to inherit the throne were 2 people, Aelius and Edmund. According to age, Edmund was Aelius' elder brother, but the rule of the Bloody Empire was that the winner was the king. Since Aelius broke through to the demon overlord realm first and defeated Edmund in one fell swoop in the duel, Edmund also had to respectfully call Aelius' elder brother when he saw him. Just a year ago, Edmund suddenly exerted his strength and broke through to the demon overlord realm in one fell swoop, which narrowed the gap between the two again. Next year was the time to rearrange the dual ranking, so Aelius and Edmund had been fighting openly and secretly. Since Edmund was suddenly assassinated, people couldn't help but suspect Aelius, who was the direct beneficiary. Chinrei thought secretly, there are many demon overlord powerhouses in the fallen angel empire, but most of them are members of the elder families. Therefore, to a certain extent, the unjustifiable regent Obsidian must respect the elder families. Although the situation of the Shadow Empire was not very clear, the elites of the Shadow Empire were almost completely lost when the royal family rebelled back then. Now, the entire Asmodeus royal family was basically supported by Catherine alone. Only the Bloody Empire had 2 princes who already had the strength of the demon overlord. The other princes were also extraordinary, not to mention the great emperor who was the strongest powerhouse. According to the development of this structural level, the Bloody Empire would be an insurmountable powerful country for a considerable period of time in the future. Tessa's second news was that the respected empire's veteran general, Bubawa, died of illness. Adelaide of the royal family and Bubawa's deputy general, Gordon, would compete for the vacant position of the third general. Tomorrow night, these two people would compete for the position of general in the martial arts arena in the center of the capital, witnessed by the Bloody Empire's Lord Raisin in front of all the audience. Chinray nodded slightly. In any case, even if it's just to take a look at Raisin, who may be the strongest enemy in the future, I should watch this battle. Chapter 435. The martial arts field of the Bloody Empire was actually an arena, but it was much larger than the ancient arena of the Dark Moon. What surprised Chinray was that there were 4 huge magic crystal screens hanging around the martial arts field, which could play the battle in the field from 4 angles. Live TV? When Chinray first saw the 4 magic crystal screens, the first thought that came to his mind was that he had encountered a crossover peer. But this idea was quickly denied by himself because these 4 screens were very ordinary mirror magic circles, and there was no sound. The principle was similar to the recording stone, but there were no more modern elements. It was said that this was the design of the genius Prince Teves. Even so, it was also an amazing idea. The huge martial arts field could accommodate a considerable number of spectators, but there was a place that was isolated at all times, which was the northernmost throne area. On the throne today, the strongest demon overlord, Raisin, Mammon, the Bloody Empire's great lord, was sitting upright. Raisin's appearance was a little different from what Chinray imagined. He was not tall, had long black hair, and his face was vaguely ordinary. He did not look particularly mighty. Not sure if it was a psychological effect, but Raisin was just sitting there normally, but he gave Chinray, who was far away in the audience, a faint sense of deterrence. Several princes sat on both sides of Raisin's lower seat. All of them looked extraordinary. The 2 people on the left and right at the front were Alias and Edmund. Teves was also among them, sitting at the end of the lower right seat. This reminded Chinray of the 9 dragons fighting for the throne during the Kangxi period of the Qing dynasty, but Raisin, who had a powerful force, was more deterrent. It all depended on how these princes stood out in the competition. In the martial arts field, 2 strange misty halos were entangled. 2 figures were colliding and separating quickly. They were in a stalemate. The surrounding ground trembled slightly, but there were only slight cracks. It seemed that this martial arts field was far superior to the Dark Moon in terms of materials and protective magic circles. Even the battle of Demon Emperor-level territory power could not cause large-scale damage. The 2 were Adelaide and Biobua, who were competing for the position of the 3rd general this time. Come to think of it, this was the 2nd round of competition. The first round was a contest of weapon control, and the 2nd round was a contest of individual combat power. Chinray was also a little surprised by the way the Imperial soldiers' game was played. It was actually a battle ball. In the end, the mutated Great Demons Team Biobua defeated the royal family's Adelaide Team 3-1. Strictly speaking, the level of the Bloody Empire's battle ball was quite average, and their technique was rough. However, it was worth noting that the Bloody Empire players had a strong will and were full of fighting spirit. The powerful oppressive momentum other than their ball skills was something that the teams of the Shadow Empire and the Fallen Angel Empire did not have. The Blood Fiend army was known as the most powerful army in the 3 empires. Judging from the fiery scene of the audience in the martial arts field, the popularity of the battle ball in the Bloody Empire was still above expectations. Several large professional stadiums had also been opened in the Bloody Empire's capital. The competition venue was very standard. Obviously, it took a lot of effort. As for the battle ball, it could only be purchased from the Dark Moon at a high price. Chinray was thinking about whether to open a battle ball fan shop in the Bloody Empire. The original stalemate situation in the field had changed. The power of Biobua's flame territory was suddenly reduced, and the black silks released by Adelaide had wrapped Biobua. Adelaide had already lost to Biobua in the previous weapon control test, so he must not lose again in this game. His own strength was slightly better, and he had the bloodline talents of the Mammon royal family, Light of Sin, and Dark Mastery, so he was determined to win. Light of Sin was a talent that weakened the opponent, and it could even restrain the war puppets of the Asmodeus royal family to a certain extent. In the territory evolved from this talent power, Bubawa's power had been firmly suppressed, and he was unable to reverse the situation. After all, the royal family had a natural advantage in combat. Not only their potential was unlimited, but they also had various bloodline talents. Compared with them, the rest of the demons were indeed at a disadvantage. Shinrei's heart moved slightly. With his eyesight, he could see that although Bubawa's strength was inferior, he would not be defeated so quickly. He must have other plans. Sure enough, seeing that Adelaide's victory was in his grasp, a crackling sound suddenly sounded. The black silks in the sky burned one after another. The fire in the black package was blazing, and a dazzling figure rushed toward Adelaide like lightning. Adelaide felt a strong crisis. He shouted loudly, and his fist emitted a lot of black light toward Bubawa. Bubawa suddenly disappeared and appeared behind the enemy, passing through Adelaide. In the blink of an eye, all the halos disappeared at the same time, leaving only two figures standing in place. Adelaide slowly turned around and looked at Bubawa coldly. He swung his body and made a cracking sound. Blood splattered everywhere, but he stood still and said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect you to be able to find the flaw in my territory. You actually didn't hesitate to burn your vitality to fight with your life when feigning defeat. Unfortunately, there's one thing that you still miscalculated, that is, I have awakened the indestructible body." Indestructible body was one of the 3 bloodline talents of the Mammon royal family. It was said that one could be immortal at the highest level. Of course, it might be an exaggeration, otherwise the Mammon royal family would be some immortal monsters. However, the indestructible body could greatly enhance endurance and recovery ability, and it was not afraid of ordinary curses or poisons. This was recognized. It could be said to be a rather practical bloodline talent, but compared to dark mastery and light of sin, this talent was much more difficult to awaken. Bubawa's 7 orifices began to bleed, and he felt a strong sense of powerlessness. His body shook, and he tried his best to barely support himself from falling down. Burning vitality was not a joke. He knew that his strength was weaker than Adelaide, so he made a desperate attempt. Unfortunately, he didn't expect that the other party had awakened the indestructible body, so he couldn't knock down Adelaide with a full blow. "I lost." Bubawa didn't pester anymore, and he spat out 3 words with difficulty. In fact, he had tried his best. At present, both sides won 1 game each. It was a tie, and there was no third game. It all depended on Raisin's judgment. For a while, the martial arts arena was quiet, and almost everyone's eyes were on the Supreme Emperor. In the face of absolute strength, no matter how clever the strategy is, it is futile. Raisin's faint voice resounded throughout the audience. Adelaide won the battle for the 3rd general this time. The most important thing about an empire's general was actually not the personal strength, but the means to command the army and the ability to control it in the war. Generally, in a war, the general was the core to control the overall situation. He would not easily charge into the enemy line personally. Each skill had its own specialization. It was difficult to find a reliable candidate who was proficient in strategy and extremely powerful. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the generals of the 3 empires of the demon realm were not particularly outstanding. They were all between the peak stage of the demon emperor and the early stage of the demon overlord. Now that Raisin the Great chose Adelaide, who was stronger in personal strength but slightly inferior in strategy, although it didn't seem very reasonable, everyone present, including Bubawa himself, didn't think there was anything unreasonable, because this was Raisin the Great's decision. This is a powerhouse. Bubawa sighed secretly and smiled bitterly. In fact, he had already guessed this result after losing to Adelaide. Not only because of the Emperor's consistent style of advocating force, but more importantly, Adelaide was the royal family of the Bloody Empire. This was destined to have advantages in some aspects that he, a mutated great demon, couldn't match. Among the 3 generals of the Empire, the first general, Gustav, was the Samo royal family, and the second general, Meister, was even more mysterious. His usual whereabouts were secretive. Conveying orders and training troops were done by others. Unless it was a special expedition, he would not show up. Moreover, it was said that no one had seen the true face of this person except for Raisin the Great. This third general was naturally more suitable to be in the hands of the Mammon royal family. Unless Bilboa could win 2 games in a row without any controversy in front of everyone, otherwise, this general position was basically out of his reach. Bilboa was disappointed in his heart, but he was most worried about another thing. Adelaide is a narrow-minded person. Today, I almost let him return in frustration and lose his face. I'm afraid that my future in the Bloodwave Legion under the command of the third general will be very difficult. At this moment, a gentle voice below Raisin sounded. Father, Sir Bilboa is proficient in strategy and the way of commanding troops, leaving a deep impression. General Gustav's Raging Flame Legion happens to lack a military advisor. I want to recommend him to serve as the third general. I wonder if Father can allow it? The one who spoke was little Prince Travis. Bilboa was worried that Adelaide would be more difficult to stay after serving as the third general. Now that he heard that he could go to the Raging Flame Legion of the first general, Gustav, and avoid Adelaide, he was very willing in his heart, but he didn't dare to show it. The second Prince Edmund frowned and stepped out to speak. Father, Bilboa has been in the Bloodwave Legion for many years. He knows the affairs and personnel of the Legion like the back of his hand. Now that Adelaide has just taken office, he is still not familiar with the Bloodwave Legion. I think it's better for Bilboa to stay in the Bloodwave Legion to assist Adelaide. The Bloodwave Legion was one of the 3 legions, and it was also a military force directly under Edmund. Although the first general, Gustav, did not belong to the great Prince Aelius, Gustav was very close to Travis, so it also meant that he was close to Aelius. It was impossible for Edmund to watch a talent like Bilboa flow to the hostile forces. Edmund's words made Bilboa look a little bitter. Although he was an important figure in the military, his fate could not be controlled by himself at this moment. Raisin ignored Edmund, but he glanced at his youngest son. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he said calmly, Travis, have you broken through to the Demon Emperor? As soon as these words came out, many audiences turned their attention to Travis. This genius prince who has been lingering in the great Demon King stage has finally broken through the bottleneck. In this way, the weakest prince has also reached the Demon Emperor level. Several princes looked at Travis with a little more vigilance or hostility. This brother, who is extremely smart in other aspects, is limited by his training talent. He has been lingering in the great Demon King realm for many years, but now he actually broke through to the Demon Emperor realm quietly. It seems that I have to be more careful in the future. Only Aelius and Edmund were still calm. Teves's training talent was well known. After spending so much time, he had just reached the Demon Emperor realm. He was far away from the Demon Overlord level, so there was no threat in this regard. Especially Aelius, who was Travis's brother from the same mother, and their relationship was very good. Travis becoming stronger also meant that his help would be stronger, so why not? When Chinray heard this news, his eyes couldn't help but narrow slightly. Travis just advanced at this time? It seems a bit too coincidental? Gustav Bridget. Someone who needs dark power to break through the bottleneck. Mentioned by the Water Elemental King, Travis advancing to the Demon Emperor. These keywords were constantly clear in his mind. When many coincidences collided together, it was not necessarily a real coincidence. Travis still maintained a calm smile. He bowed unhurriedly and said, Yes, Father is really insightful. I just came back from outside some time ago, and I haven't had the time to report to Father. Very well. Raisin nodded slightly. Then I will agree to your request. Listening to Raisin's tone, it was because Travis reached the Demon Emperor realm that he agreed to this irrelevant request, but Edmund did not dare to express the slightest objection because once Raisin decided on something, he would never change it. Bilboa secretly breathed a sigh of relief and showed gratitude to Travis. This time, the most important backbone of the Bloodwave Legion switched to the Wrath-Flame Legion. It weakened Edmund and strengthened Aelius at the same time. Several princes showed envy to Alias. With such a talented and intelligent brother, I'm afraid these brothers are not his opponent even if they unite. Shenrui was thinking about a problem. When Asgler came to the Dark Moon to win me over, he once made a statement in the name of the Bloody Empire's Red Leaf Chamber of Commerce. He also stated that the great Prince Alias was behind the Hongye Chamber of Commerce. Does this mean that the mysterious leader of Bloodfall is the Bloody Empire's great Prince Alias? Shenrui immediately rejected this hypothesis. Although Alias has reached the demon overlord level, he is far from the peak state of Asgler and Manu. Moreover, there is also an unruly person like the crystal dragon Jacob. It is impossible to suppress these people by relying on Alias's power alone. To be able to suppress these peak stage of the demon overlord powerhouses. Shenrui's gaze fell on the throne in the distance again. Could it be, if it is, him? Some doubts can be explained, but there are more new doubts. Shenrui felt a headache for a while. At this time, Great Prince Alias had officially announced that Adelaide was the new third general of the Empire, and the Legion leader of the Bloodwave Legion. Raisin personally awarded Adelaide the corresponding medal and sword. Second Prince Edmund also announced later that the Bloody Empire's trade fair that had been prepared for a long time would officially begin in 2 days. Perhaps influenced by the Dark Moon's auction and trade fair, the Bloody Empire and the Shadow Empire held auctions at the same time, and the Bloody Empire's trade fair was about to begin. Shenrui heard Tess talk about this trade fair. The scales seemed to be quite large. It just so happened that he could take this opportunity to inquire about mountain secret and fertile yuan soil. Chapter 436. 2 days later, the Bloody Empire's trade fair was held as scheduled. Shenrui used an alias and became a vendor in the trade fair. It was just that this vendor was a bit special. They were all concentrated in a separate small store. It was said that very rare and special items were sold there. Only guests with special identities could visit this store. Tess spent a lot of effort to inquire about this news. Shenrui originally wanted to take this opportunity to find fertile yuan soil and some materials for making artifacts, so he naturally would not let go of this good opportunity. It was just that Tess's current ability was not enough for him to join the ranks of special guests, so Shenrui cleverly chose to become a seller. Despite Tess's help, it was not easy to enter this store. He must have unique rare goods. Shenrui took out some gadgets that he made in the Rainbow Valley before. The material or value of these gadgets were not very high, but the characteristic of this store was not only about value. The most important thing was special. The more unique and weird, the better. In the end, Shenrui's gadgets finally passed the review and successfully entered the store. Before the sale, all the merchants in this independent store were lectured. The content of the lecture was about some special rules of the store. One of the things that was emphasized was that at a certain time, a distinguished female guest would come to this independent store. They must entertain her well. No matter what this guest liked, they must sell it to her. In terms of price, it was fine as long as it was appropriate. It couldn't be too high or too low. If this female guest successfully bought a certain item, then she would get 5 times the price of the item afterward. If the customer was satisfied, she would get 10 times the reward afterward. A small number of people were merchants who had participated in similar trade fairs in the Bloody Empire's capital in the past. It was said that there were such special rules at that time, and the reward was 10 times after the event, so the reliability was beyond doubt. That female guest was likely to be a member of the royal family with a particularly noble status. Shenrui was a little curious about this, but it was just curiosity and nothing more. He did not take it to heart. At this moment, his attention was focused on the goods of those peers. He really found some of the materials and some rare good things needed for the artifact. Unfortunately, he did not see the biggest target, fertile yuan soil, nor did he hear about mountain secret and related news from these people. As a fellow seller, Shenrui had already communicated with the merchants that he liked. If there were no customers buying the materials and goods in the end, they could exchange the goods they needed with each other or sell them to him at a suitable price. Note: This beauty does not include heroine plus enchantress plus dragon lady plus female boss plus hidden character queen. The woman seemed to be curious about everything. She looked around along the way and picked up a product from time to time, but she put it down again under the eager gaze of the stall owner. She was about to walk in the direction of Chenrei. Perhaps the other merchants were too eager, and Chenrei seemed cold. The woman glanced at the great demon incarnated by Chenrei and fell on the pile of weird stuff in front of him. Her eyes moved suddenly. She did not look at the other stalls and walked straight to Chenrei. The vendor on the side regretted it. If I knew it, I would have learned from the cunning great demon and pretended to be cold. Yes, it is the ancient saying passed down by the ancient demons, called, be unconventional. The woman picked up a simple countdown timer made by Chenrei with ancient runes, looked at it for a while, and picked up another wristband that automatically glowed according to the time. She asked, "Did you make this yourself?" Listening to the voice, it seemed to be a girl, and it was soft and pleasant. Chenrei did not speak, but he just nodded. The old dwarf on the side was so jealous that his eyeballs almost protruded out. Although the goddess of wealth saw a lot of things along the way, she did not say a word. She actually spoke to this damn great demon. This means that she may be very interested in this guy's goods, and she will even buy this guy's goods. It was not only the old dwarf who was jealous, but also the surrounding merchants. However, no one knew the horror in Chenrei's heart. At this moment, he was forcibly using his power to suppress the fluctuations of his emotions because if he was careless, he would be noticed by the other party. Race, greed, royal family. Comprehensive strength assessment C+S, physique CS, strength CS, spirit CS, agility CS, analysis, dark attribute, light attribute. Another demon overlord level powerhouse, and she is even a female of the Mammon royal family. From the original 7 empires of the demon realm to the present 3 empires, the Bloody Empire, the Dark Shadow Empire, and the Fallen Angel Empire were able to stand in the demon realm for so many years without falling. They must have their own strong trump cards, which were the Demon Emperor and Demon Overlord powerhouses. It could be seen from the last Dark Moon auction that Obsidian dispatched 2 Demon Overlord level assassins at a time. No wonder even a powerful organization like the Bloodfall could only lurk in the dark and use conspiracies to subvert the regime instead of directly seizing it by force. In addition to the demon realm's strongest Raisin the Great himself, Chenrei had already met the first General Gustav, Bridget, the 2 princes Alias, Edmund, and this mysterious woman. There were 5 people, and he didn't know how much terrifying strength was hidden. Originally in the Dark Moon estate that was suppressed by the capital, the highest that Chenrei had seen was Jia's Great Demon King, now promoted to Demon Emperor. With the growth of his knowledge and the improvement of his own level, the number of powerhouses in his field of vision began to gradually increase. When he himself also became a high-level powerhouse, and he had hope of going to the next level, the peak powerhouses that he could only look up to before no longer became unattainable. Having said that, if the demon overlord in front of him was really a young girl, those old demon emperors and demon overlords could only go to the corner to draw circles. What made Chenrei feel the most incredible was that this woman's attribute actually had light attribute in addition to the inherent dark attribute of the Mammon royal family. The demon realm was the world where the dark element was the most active. The dark element's nemesis, the light element, would be suppressed to a very low level here. The combat power of humans who practice light magic, such as Samuel and Nero, would naturally drop a lot. Of course, it was also a better training to a certain extent. However, this woman of the greedy royal family actually had the light attribute that was incompatible with the dark attribute. What does this mean? Mutation? If the super system didn't show her identity as a demon realm royal family, Chenrei would think that this was a human woman who entered the demon realm. The woman didn't notice Chenrei's abnormality, or her attention wasn't on him at all. Instead, she picked up those little things one by one and kept nodding. Wow! Although the highest is only 2 yuan, these creations are so interesting. Where did you learn it? These words fell into Chenrei's ears, and he was shocked again. This, 2 yuan, was not the same as the 2 yuan in the convenience store, but the level of the ancient runes used to make the gadgets. This woman actually saw through it at a glance. I didn't expect that apart from Rala, the demon realm has such a strange woman who is proficient in ancient runes. Chenrui's mind turned quickly, and he immediately made up a story. This was taught to me by an old man in the village when I was young. It is amazing, but unfortunately, he disappeared later. I have spent a lot of effort over the years, and I can only reach this level. In terms of 2 yuan, you are already very good. As the woman said, she asked curiously, "What does the old man look like?" "I can't remember very clearly. It seems that he was wearing a black headscarf and had a white beard. He had no name, and people called him Whitebeard. I vaguely remember that he mentioned something like Mountain Secret before he left. I don't know if it is the place he is going. Later, I have been looking for this old man and Mountain Secret, but unfortunately, I have never found his whereabouts." This white beard was borrowed from a famous cartoon image that Chenrui had seen before. He almost said Yonko in hockey, but fortunately he stopped in time. "Mountain Secret?" The woman's eyes flashed slightly, then she shook her head. "There is no white beard there. You don't have to waste your effort." Chenrui had a sudden inspiration just now, so he threw a stone to ask for directions with the mentality of trying. He didn't expect to really bump into the whereabouts of Mountain Secret. His heartbeat couldn't help but accelerate a little. He blurted out, "Miss, do you know Mountain Secret?" The woman seemed to realize that she had made a slip of the tongue. She hurriedly covered her mouth and shook her head. She looked like she was trying to hide something. She gave people the feeling that she was more and more like a cute and naive girl. She didn't match the terrifying strength of a demon overlord. Chenrui asked several times in a roundabout way, but there was still no result. His heart moved, and he changed the topic to ancient runes. "This honorable lady, you seem to know this kind of magic runes? If possible, I hope to ask Miss for advice." The girl just shook her head. She was anxious after being asked, so she turned around and was about to leave. How could Chenrui give up this important source of information? "Miss, wait a minute, I have the most novel special thing here. I'm sure you have never seen it before." This sentence made the girl stop. When she looked back, there was a strange thing about the size of 2 palms in Chenrui's hand. It seemed to be a flat square crystal with a smooth and flat surface. It was glowing with a mysterious luster. The girl turned around and asked curiously, "What is this novel thing?" "This is an extremely mysterious magic prop. It contains boundless wisdom and philosophy. It tells us through a fun game that the mistakes we make will accumulate, and the successes we achieve will disappear." Chenrui looked like a philosopher, but unfortunately it was a waste of expression. The girl didn't listen to anything else, but she heard the words, "fun game," clearly. Her eyes suddenly sparkled. The so-called mysterious prop containing this boundless philosophy was actually the Tetris game made by Chenrui using runes and mechanics. During the unbearable career of handyman plus chef plus experimental subject plus deputy valley master in the Rainbow Valley, this temporary game console accompanied him through rounds of difficult days. Finally, he got through the difficulties and ushered in the blissful sexual life of the beautiful valley master. This was already an improved game console. Unfortunately, the ancient runes were too complicated, so it could only simulate such a small and simple game. Otherwise, Chenrui still wanted to open an online game company and use the deceptive free method of that world to be an unscrupulous game dealer in the demon realm. This is the moving position, and this is the rotation direction. This way, you can eliminate them horizontally. The one next to it is the next block to appear. That number is my highest record. There are bonus points for eliminating 2 or more rows in a row. The girl leaned over and watched him play for a while. Her eyes had begun to flash with little stars. "Can you let me try?" So, under the guidance of Chenrui, the girl began to try to explore the philosophy in depth. The result was out of control. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed, and the girl was still holding the crystal slate intently. She had no intention of leaving at all. The surrounding businessmen's eyes were almost red. Ms. Tiffany, I still have to do business. How about that? Chenrui had already asked the girl's name in the conversation, but that was all. Now that Tiffany was obviously addicted to the game, her ears could no longer hear anything else. Press the red mark above. Tiffany subconsciously pressed the mark, but the game was paused. She seemed to react and said embarrassedly, I'm sorry, Simon. I like this magic item very, very much. How much can I sell it for? Simon was the pseudonym used by Chenrui. In the conversation, he had already probed that this girl was a gentle and reasonable type. She should not rely on her royal family identity and demon overlord strength to snatch it. If it was Rala, perhaps this game console would have already belonged to this lady. This is the only and most precious souvenir left to me by Whitebeard. It is not for sale. Seeing Tiffany's disappointed gaze, Chenrui seized the opportunity to say, However, Whitebeard once said that he wants to find something called fertile yuan soil. If Ms. Tiffany can give me fertile yuan soil, I am willing to exchange this most precious souvenir. Fertile yuan soil! Tiffany seemed a little surprised, then she shook her head, but her eyes stared at the game console, and couldn't bear to move away. In fact, there were loopholes in Chenrui's words. First, she only remembered that Whitebeard mentioned mountain secret, and now there was fertile yuan soil. However, Tiffany was obviously not the kind of scheming person. In addition, she was attracted by the game console, so she didn't pay much attention. However, no matter how Chenrui tempted her, the girl still refused to divulge the things related to mountain secret and fertile yuan soil. Chenrui knew that the other party had demon overlord strength after all, so he couldn't go too far. He immediately sighed. It is also a rare opportunity to meet Ms. Tiffany today. How about this? I will give this precious game crystal board to you as a gift between friends. Thank you, Simon! Tiffany was overjoyed. She took it as if she had received a treasure. Seeing Chenrui shaking his head and sighing, she felt sorry in her heart. I'm sorry, there are some things that I really can't tell you. That fertile yuan soil. I remember that there should be records in the capital's Mechanic Association's database. You can go and have a look if you have the chance. However, that kind of thing is really not something you can come into contact with. I'm leaving now. I hope we will have a chance to meet again next time. In order to express my gratitude for your precious gift, I will buy everything on your booth. Chenrui did not refuse Tiffany's kindness because he was now a businessman. In any case, there is finally some progress. It seems that I really have to go to the Mechanic Association. Chapter 437. At the end of the day's trading, Chenrui's stall was the most enviable. Not to mention chatting for a few hours, it was finally bought by the mysterious lady. That guy actually leisurely pretended to be a customer. He wandered around in the market and bought a lot of things. Although they had spent quite a lot of money, everyone knew that this, Simon, was the only stall in the entire market that could satisfy the noble lady, and it was not just a normal kind of satisfaction. It seemed that he would definitely get the 10 times reward. No matter what, this guy had made a killing today. In fact, money was really just a fleeting cloud for Chenrui. The real gain this time was to get the precious clue of fertile yuan soil, and he also bought many rare things including artifact materials. It was a worthwhile trip. Sure enough, at noon, Chenrui left the market with a guard under everyone's envious gaze. The guard took Chenrui all the way out of the bustling trade fair and came to the suburbs in the west. Chenrui was a little puzzled. Why is the reward cached in such a place? When they came to a remote hut, there was a thin stranger with a cold face. He waved to the guard, and the guard saluted and retreated. My name is Mentala. I'm the leader of the Secret Intelligence Department of the capital. The Secret Intelligence Department is the secret legion responsible for the security of the capital. From now on, you will answer every question I ask. If there is any fraud or negligence, don't think about leaving here alive today. Secret Intelligence Department? Chenrui's mind moved. It should be an espionage department with the same nature as the Dark Demon. It seems that the 10 times reward this time is really a surprise. Sir, didn't you say that there is a 10 times reward? Didn't I say that you can only answer once I ask? Mentala's Demon King level aura suddenly burst out, making the little, intermediate demon, Chunrui, unable to stand steadily. He even cooperated, and almost fell to the ground. Mentala looked at the effect of his aura with satisfaction and said, "What did you sell to that lady?" Chunrui replied timidly, "Those are just some gadgets I made myself. I used the magic array to muffle the sound for some entertainment effect. They don't have any special effect. I know you're talking about those worthless things. What I'm asking you now is, what is the thing that the young lady loves so much that she can't put down?" "That's a crystal cube. It's a magic tool that I've collected for many years. It's a pity that there's only one left." "Square crystal board? Are you sure there's only one? Can you make the same thing again?" Mentala's eyes narrowed. "If you can make a similar item, in addition to the 10 times reward, you will also get unimaginable wealth." Shenrui's eyes seemed to be glowing, but he shook his head regretfully. "That's the only precious prop, and I've tried many times, but I can't copy it. Otherwise, I would have sold it to Miss Tiffany." "Very well, then there's no point in keeping you." Murderous intent flashed in Mentala's eyes. "What this, Simon, said is basically consistent with the information obtained in the market, so there should be no problem." Shinrui had long felt that this guy had murderous intent. From the beginning, when he revealed that he was the Secret Intelligence Department's team leader, he didn't intend to let him, Simon, leave alive, but he still felt strange about the motive of this murderous intent. He pretended to be shocked and stepped back. "Why? Didn't you say that if the young lady is satisfied, there will be 10 times the reward? You should have a reward. You can only blame yourself for being reckless. You actually dared to be so close to the young lady and touch the taboo of a certain big shot. Just knowing her name is enough for you to die 100 times. But you only have one life. I will torture you 100 times until you die." Mentala's murderous intent was exuding, and he said sinisterly, "Not only you, but everyone related to you will all be obliterated." As soon as he finished speaking, he felt his head tighten. There was already an extra hand that clasped his skull like an iron claw. Mentala was shocked. He instinctively felt that as long as this terrifying hand exerted a little force, his head could be completely shattered. With the strength of a demon king, there was no room for resistance at all. "Who is that so-called big shot? I'll give you 10 seconds to answer. If you want your head to explode, you can try to remain silent." The other party's cold voice sounded. Mentala never thought that this weak peddler would actually transform into a powerhouse with terrifying power. That kind of hidden aura alone was enough to make him kneel on the ground. This person is the Great Demon King? No! It's definitely not just the Great Demon King! Who are you? Mentala's heart tightened all of a sudden. There are still 5 seconds. When Chinrui slightly increased his strength, Mentala felt that the blood in his brain seemed to speed up by dozens of times, almost bursting. However, he gritted his teeth as if he had chewed something. His face quickly turned blue, and his eyes began to collapse. Chinrui knew that it was bad. When he let go, Mentala's body had softened and fell to the ground. His pale face had become gray, and green blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He had obviously committed suicide by taking poison. It seemed that this Mentala was really a member of the Bloody Empire's Secret Intelligence Department. He was ruthless and decisive. In order not to leak information, he actually committed suicide without hesitation. However, what Mentala said about obliterating all related people made Chinrui shocked. He entered the special store through Tessa's relationship. It seemed that Tess was in danger. The urgent task was to gather the rest of the Dark Demon members first. Before Isabella officially appointed a new person in charge, he must maintain the continuity of the intelligence on the Bloody Empire's side and focus on investigating the relevant intelligence of Tiffany and a certain big shot. The next day, A man wearing a mechanic apprentice costume appeared in front of the Mechanic Association building of the Bloody Empire. The scale of the Mechanic Association of the Bloody Empire was far greater than that of the Shadow Empire and the Fallen Angel Empire. President Nate was known as the top mechanic master of the Demon Realm, but it seemed relatively deserted today because the Mechanic Association had a special store at the trade fair to sell equipment and materials to the outside. The business was very popular, and most of the manpower was invested there. Fill in this form and pay the assessment fee of 100 black crystal coins. Then, you can go to the assessment center on the 4th floor to participate in the assessment certification. 100 black crystal coins? Shinrei was stunned. I only used 50 black crystal coins for the Mechanic Association assessment in the Shadow Empire. Why is the price of the same ordinary mechanic assessment here doubled? You're from another place, right? The registrar raised his head, looked at him a few times, and said impatiently, Our Bloody Empire Mechanic Association has the top mechanic master in the Demon Realm, and our mechanics are also the strongest at the same level. The mechanic you successfully certified in the Bloody Empire is simply 2 different levels from those in other empires. Think about it yourself whether this 100 black crystal coins is worth it or not. There is actually a brand effect? Shinrei secretly sneered. If I really want to compare, Nate may not be the real top of the Demon Realm. He just used the rules of the Masters contest to win. In terms of metal proficiency alone, Master Anderson of the Shadow Empire is better than Nate. Besides, Nate still has something that cannot be seen. Although he thought so, he still took out the black crystal coins happily. I see. I have been learning from my teacher in a remote estate. Later, my teacher died of illness, so I came to the capital for the assessment. I don't know these rules. I'm really sorry. Thank you for explaining. The registrar saw the extra 20 black crystal coins and Shinrei's meaningful smile. He glanced around carefully and put it away calmly. His impression of this outsider apprentice suddenly increased by a few levels. Richard, you are a smart person. The registrar glanced at the name on the form and said with a smile, There are several masters on the 4th floor who are qualified for the certification assessment. You can choose the corresponding master according to your most proficient proficiency. The chances of passing are much higher. For example, Master Olistan of Office No. 7 is good at metal proficiency and likes fire magic materials. Master Turia of Office Number 4 is good at leather proficiency and likes spirits. Under Shinrei's little bribery, the registrar revealed the preferences and temperament of the Alliance's masters. In the end, he specially reminded, By the way, you'd better not go to Office Number 13. Sir Horford. Samuel, the secret disciple of Sir Nate, is there. This Sir is a dual proficiency in metal and leather. He is also the most promising genius mechanic master to inherit the president. When Sir Nate was experimenting behind closed doors some time ago, the affairs of the Alliance have been temporarily managed by Sir Horford. However, Sir Horford's temperament is weird and not easy to get along with. If you're not sure, it's better not to hit the wall. Horford? Shinrei immediately thought of the dual proficiency master who was defeated by him in the Shadow Empire's mechanic contest. It seemed that he actually used his real name. He probably wanted to become famous in that mechanic contest, but unfortunately, he met Shinrei, the evildoer, and he became a background character. Not only that, after Shinrei went undercover into the Crystal Valley, he also met Horford. Later, there was great chaos in the Crystal Valley, and the Mystic Valley was also destroyed by Shinrei's scheme. Horford was missing. Unexpectedly, he did not die and returned to the Bloody Empire. Shinrei could be sure that Horford was definitely related to the Blood Fall, and the first general of the Bloody Empire, Gustav Bridget, was the current patriarch of the Samuel royal family. Horford was likely to be an important member of the Blood Fall organization. However, Shinrei didn't rush to decide to plot against Horford. He sneaked into the Mechanic Association this time for more important things. By the way, sir, my teacher once said that there are countless precious mechanics classics and materials in the Mechanic Association. I have always been eager for them. I wonder if I can browse and read them? Our classics and materials here are the most abundant in the three empires. We have a special book collection hall. The registrar showed pride. However, the book collection hall has strict authority restrictions. Only mechanics certified by the Alliance can enter. The higher the level, the higher the contribution points and authority required. The registrar who received the commission seemed very enthusiastic. He introduced in great detail and even helped Chinrui to plan. For newcomers, contribution points are more difficult to accumulate, and some levels require a master to enter. If it's not enough, it's also a shortcut to find a master as a teacher. However, even if a master spends contribution points, he may not be able to access the core level information. He must get the special permission of the president, Sir Nate. Chinrui nodded. The rules of the Bloody Empire Book Collection Hall were similar to the ancient magic tower of the Dark Shadow Empire. For now, it was better to pass the mechanic assessment first. He bid farewell to the enthusiastic registrar and went straight to the assessment center on the 4th floor. Chapter 438. In the number 4 office of the assessment center, the great demon master Turia with a red nose looked suspiciously at the great demon apprentice in front of him handing in a newly made magic leather wristband. The technique used by this apprentice could be described as a mess. It even seriously violated the norm, but he forcefully made a high-grade wristband which reached the qualified line of mechanics. It was like playing basketball. Some people's shooting posture or hand shape was as strange as flying from the sky. It was as awkward as it could be, but he could still shoot the ball. Looking at Chinrui's sweaty appearance, Master Turia took a sip of the purple berry wine offered by the apprentice. He finally nodded and stamped his seal on the certificate. Although your production process is messy, your technique is very skilled. Finally, you can successfully make this high-grade magic wristband. I'll give you the qualification of mechanics. Thank you, Master. Chinrui nodded quickly. He knew himself well. The sweaty face was definitely not fake. He was obviously at the master level, but it was really not easy to make an apprentice-level item under the eyes of a master. He deliberately chose Master Turia, who loved wine, for his own consideration. After all, Horford and he had fought against each other in the Shadow Empire's mechanic contest. Even if he used this method to cover it up, it was difficult to guarantee that there would be no flaws. According to the previous, enthusiastic, level personnel, Master Turia was not a strict person. He was the easiest to talk to. Sure enough, he could successfully pass the assessment this time. If your technique and some basics are not corrected, I'm afraid you will stop as a mechanic for the rest of your life. Master Turia rubbed his brandy nose. If you really want to make progress on the road of mechanics, you must correct a lot of things. Understood, thank you, Master. I will work hard to read the learning materials during this time. I hope Master can give me more advice by then. Chinrui was in awe and bowed. Although this master's level was low, he was good at wine, but he wasn't stupid. From this exhortation, he was more responsible than I thought. And you can go to the book collection hall to read more basic books. As for advice, you can consider it if you have time. Master Turia shook the bottle in his hand, meaning that whether he had time depended on its appearance. Chinrui smiled knowingly and left. After obtaining the mechanic certification, Chinrui came to the previous assessment registration office again. The registrar was called Enraka. As soon as he saw Chinrui got the certificate of passing Master Turia's review, he quickly and enthusiastically took him to the warehouse to receive the mechanic badge and robe. Chinrui had to give him some benefits, which made Enraka beam with joy. Enraka brought him to the book collection hall. The great library hall was a very large building. Since it was the busiest time of the trade fair in the imperial city, there were not many people. However, the management was still very strict. Each floor had a separate administrator and a complicated magic circle. Chinrui could enter the first floor. As long as he was a mechanic, he could read freely, but there was a certain time limit. It was a maximum of 5 hours a day, and it couldn't be lent out. Each book had a corresponding magic mark. If he took it away without permission, even if it was in the space equipment, it would be detected. Besides, there was also omnidirectional monitoring. It was considered a very modern facility. And Raka was very familiar with the administrator of the first floor. With his relationship, Chen-Rui could read twice as long each time, which was considered very convenient. Chen-Rui entered the first floor. It felt like the library in his previous life. There were many rooms in different categories. When he walked in, it was actually a large space. In addition to the books on basic knowledge, there were various mechanic-level experiences and information, including a large number of recognized formulas. There were all kinds of things, which seemed to be intermingled. Chen-Rui activated deep analysis and began to browse at an amazing speed. He only skimmed through each information at a glance. Soon, he had browsed through nearly half of the books in this room. Chen-Rui felt someone's gaze. When he looked back, he saw a girl wearing glasses and also wearing a mechanic's robe looking at him in surprise. This girl was a bit pretty. She wore a pair of glasses and the wide robe faintly showed her curvaceous figure. She was not tall, but she was very voluptuous. "Miss? What's the matter?" The girl came back to her senses, and her face was a little red. "My name is Beluin. Are you reading?" This girl was a mutated great demon. Her strength was intermediate demon. She was very ordinary. "As you can see, I'm not reading, but flipping through books." Chen-Rui knew that he might be too eye-catching, so he jokingly made up a sentence. "My name is Richard. I just went to participate in the mechanics certification, but Master Turia said that I have to flip through all the books here to officially pass." "Are you sure it's Master Turia? Why is he making things difficult for you like this?" The girl seemed to be even more surprised. Chen-Rui showed a pitiful look. "Maybe it's because the master is drunk, but I can only do it. Otherwise, the robe I just got will be taken back. Miss Beluin, please don't tell others, or I will be miserable." Beluin's face turned red again, this time because of anger. "How can my father do this? I will go to him now and help you seek justice." "Father? This is Master Turia's daughter?" Chen-Rui didn't expect to make a mistake, so he quickly changed his words. "It turns out that Master Turia is your father. I was just joking just now." The master is the most lenient to people. The entire Mechanic Association knows that, but when I was certifying just now, the master said that my foundation is not very solid, and he gave me some advice, so I came here to find some information and want to improve my skills. It turns out to be a joke. You are really... Beluin breathed a sigh of relief. Your foundation is not strong, but you still passed my father's assessment. You must have spent a lot of money for wine. However, although my father likes wine, he won't talk nonsense. Why don't I recommend a few basic books to you? Sure enough, no one knows a daughter better than her father, but Chen-Rui's real mechanics level was only higher than Master Turia. Of course, he wouldn't really look for any information. Instead, Miss Beluin's enthusiasm made it easy for him to have a good impression. He thought about it and said, "Thank you, miss. I have already found the basic information. To tell you the truth, in fact, my biggest purpose of coming to the book collection hall is some information that my teacher never forgot before his death seems to be related to mountain secret and fertile yuan soil, so I want to find them. It can be regarded as fulfilling my teacher's last wish. This is my little secret. Please don't tell others, miss." "Mountain secret? Fertile yuan soil?" Beluin pondered. "I really haven't heard of it. No wonder you flipped through the books like that. Sorry, I didn't mean to know your secret, but you flipped too fast, so it is inevitable that you missed something. Let me help you." Beluin came to a book, but she did not open the book. She just put her hand on it, then she let go for a moment and touched another book. Her speed was faster than reading deep analysis. This time it was Chen-Rui's turn to be surprised. "Miss Beluin, this is..." Beluin smiled slightly. "It's just a little mutated talent. It's useless." Chen-Rui didn't think that this was a useless talent. He could sense the contents of the book just by touching the cover with his hand, and it also had a role similar to a fast search engine. He could filter the relevant information at a very fast speed. In fact, it was quite a practical talent. In this way, one flipped, and the other sensed. A few hours had passed unknowingly. Under the extraordinary speed and method of the two, they almost went through all the rooms on the first floor, but unfortunately, there was no desired result. At first, Belluin was a little worried about Chenrui's fast flipping. However, when Chenrui casually said a certain word on a certain page and a certain line, the shocked Belluin finally understood that this Richard had a similar mutated talent as her. She couldn't help but feel a little more cordial in her heart. Belluin, what are you looking for? A man's voice sounded. Belluin frowned. Nothing, I'm just helping this newly promoted mechanic, Richard, to find some basic things. Chapter 439. In the number 4 office of the assessment center, Master Turia frowned and looked at the weird apprentice who appeared in front of him again. Oh yes, he should be a mechanic now. He even passed the assessment in my hands previously. I have a little impression of this guy. His mechanic skills are messy. He barely passes. However, the wine is not bad. The question is, why is my daughter, Belluin, also with this guy? At this time, Belluin walked up and whispered a few words. Before his daughter finished speaking, Master Turia's brandy nose became redder. Great Demon's talent was activated. He instantly appeared in front of Chenrui and grabbed his robe. You damn liar, what method did you use to deceive my baby daughter in such a short time? In Turia's impression, his daughter was a steady and opinionated girl. She would never easily recommend a person to him, and he knew very well how bad the level of the recommended guy in front of him was. It could be imagined that he must have used some special means. Could it be seduction? This time is too short. Moreover, this guy's appearance is not good. Master Turia, who was a little excited due to the effect of alcohol, was about to ask while gritting his teeth, then he heard his daughter's angry voice. Father! Can you listen to me finish my words? Turia saw his daughter's flushed face. She seemed to be really angry. He quickly let go of his hand and looked at Chenrui threateningly. Kid, don't try to escape. See how I deal with you in a while. Chenrui was sprayed with a drunken smell of alcohol, and he was speechless for a while. Belluin dragged Master Turia to the side and said a few more words. Turia's eyes suddenly lit up, and he sobered up a lot. He came in front of Chenrui and looked at him carefully. Chenrui was a little creeped out by his stare, then he saw Master Turia took out a cloak. Tell me the attributes and material of this equipment. Chenrui quickly gave the answer. Increase movement speed by 32% and offset 20% of magic damage. A total of 11 materials are used. I only know shark line and silver shell powder, and I don't know what the main material is. The attribute should be able to automatically recover a certain degree of damage. This is considered quasi-legendary grade equipment, right? What do you mean considered? Absolutely. When Turia heard that the attributes and the number of materials were exactly correct, he was surprised and delighted. He couldn't help but curse. The main material is demon cicada wing thread. Your teacher is such a jerk. They didn't even teach you such basic material knowledge. Master, although I really want to get your guidance, please do not insult my deceased teacher. Otherwise, I would rather give up my request to Miss Belluin. Chenrui looked angry. He knew very well that once this ability was displayed, Turia would never let him go. Generally speaking, equipment appraisal required special equipment and master-level eyesight to accurately determine the various attributes, not to mention the even more difficult material appraisal. All right. Very good. Turia was not angry but happy. Being able to have such outstanding talent, and his moral character did not seem to be bad. At least he was quite grateful to his teacher. He was indeed a candidate for an excellent disciple. As long as this Richard can master more knowledge of materials science, even if his mechanics stay in the current bad state, he can at least become a master-level equipment appraiser. He is likely to be the strongest appraisal master in the entire Mechanic Association and the entire demon realm in the future. To be able to become the teacher of the strongest appraisal master. Turia's eyes were even brighter. From now on, you are my disciple. I will go and declare to the association now. Declare to the association? Father, are you planning to accept an official disciple? Belluin looked surprised. Yes, you will find Truss and Roger later. Let's have a meal together. Turia walked out excitedly, and he suddenly turned around. Richard, remember to prepare the wine to honor the teacher. Before Chinrui could speak, Turia had already walked out of the office. Belluin happily pulled Chinrui and left. Great! Richard, Truss, and Roger are the other 2 students of the teacher. Let's go and meet them together. Wait a minute. Why do these people make decisions directly without asking the opinions of the parties involved? Actually, I just want to be a registered disciple to be able to go to the book collection hall to check information. Chenrui secretly smiled bitterly. But things seem to be smoother than expected, don't they? Student Richard? Soon, the news that Master Turia accepted a new official disciple spread. Master Turia's vision has always been very high, and he is particularly strict in accepting disciples. Even if President Nate once recommended his nephew, Ipui, to be his disciple, he didn't accept it. Now he actually accepted a new disciple. It is said that he is a rookie mechanic who has just passed the assessment and certification. For a while, there was a lot of discussion in the Mechanic Association. Some people thought that Richard was talented and intelligent, and he was appreciated by Master Turia during the assessment, so he made an exception to accept him as a disciple. Some people thought that Richard was deliberately planning to get close to Master Turia's daughter, Belluin, and he finally succeeded in achieving his goal. This speculation was not groundless because more than one person saw Richard and Belluin staying on the first floor of the book collection hall for a long time. All in all, this guy named Richard was definitely a lucky guy who could become Master Turia's disciple. The most jealous one was Thorpe, who had been pursuing Belluin but failed. Chinrui turned a blind eye to these rumors. His biggest goal was the information on the higher level of the book collection hall. However, Master Turia attached great importance to Chinrui. He was more focused on cultivating Chinrui's foundation. Chinrui was a little dumbfounded about this. However, due to the super system, his starting point of mechanics was very high. Although his foundation was made up in time through self-study, it was not quite strong after all. It was considered to be reconsolidated now. However, in front of Master Turia, Chenrui definitely couldn't show his true level. He only showed his amazing memory. As for his understanding, it was still terrible. Master Turia, who was often angry at Chenrui for not living up to his expectations, was furious. For the master and disciple, this was undoubtedly a very painful thing. With the help of Belluin, Master Turia finally agreed to take him to the second floor of the book collection hall to take a look. Just in case, Chenrui had made an agreement with Belluin to keep it a secret. He didn't say anything about mountain secret and fertile yuan soil, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble. During this period, Chenrui also mentioned these 2 things or related issues in front of Master Turia, but Turia did not have a special reaction. He probably didn't know. Fortunately, he could finally go to the second floor to explore it. Turia also had his own considerations for taking Chenrui to the second floor. This disciple's talent is very strong. Perhaps it is because he stayed in a remote small place for a long time and encountered a half-baked first teacher, so he hasn't been enlightened yet. It is really difficult to change in a hurry, so it is better to let him slowly feel and improve under the influence of this big atmosphere and environment. To be precise, it is to increase his reading now. Regardless of whether he understands or not, he will remember it now. One day, he will master the true essence of mechanics independently. Taking a step back, just the accumulation of the knowledge of the material books can make the function of the magic eyes more accurate and perfect. I have to say that Turia is quite dedicated to the training of his disciples. On the second floor of the book collection hall, masters can take their disciples to browse for free, but ordinary mechanics need to spend contribution points. As for the third floor, even the masters need to spend a lot of contribution points. The books on the second floor are a little less than the first floor, but the content is relatively more formal, incisive, and more profound. Chenrei still browsed at high speed. Although this strange scene attracted the attention of many mechanics, with Master Turia by the side, most of those people thought it was a special mission arranged by the master, so they didn't step forward to ask. After watching for a while, they didn't pay too much attention. After all, it costs contribution points here. Turia, is this your new disciple? A cold voice came. It turned out to be a woman in a black robe. She was wearing glasses, and her appearance was beautiful. She was tall and thin, but her face was cold as if everyone owed her millions of black crystal coins. Chenrei glanced at the master badge on the woman's chest, then he looked at the girl following behind. It was actually Belluin. Belluin once mentioned that in addition to leather, she was more talented in jewelry and props, so she worshipped another master of the Bloody Empire Mechanic Association, Mavina, as her master. It was also a combination of the strengths of both schools. The registrar, Anraka, was now a good friend of Chenrei. The warm-hearted man, who claimed to know everything in the alliance, had revealed a lot of gossip. Mavina, the senior master of jewelry proficiency, was a famous cold-faced woman in the alliance. She had an eccentric temper and was one of the most difficult people to deal with. When Turia saw Mavina, he quickly stood up from his seat and smiled awkwardly. It turns out to be Master Mavina. Richard, come over and greet Master Mavina. Chenrei stepped forward and bowed to Mavina. Master Mavina. Mavina ignored Chenrei, and her eyes fell on the wine bottle in Turia's hand. She frowned in disgust. The smell of alcohol on you seems to be getting stronger. For some reason, Turia, who was usually careless, seemed to be shorter in front of Mavina. He said guiltily, "This is the specialty purple berry wine of the Shadow Empire that Richard brought." Mavina glared at Chenrei and snorted coldly. As she was about to speak, another enigmatic voice sounded. It turns out to be like this. No wonder Master Turia will accept an apprentice. It turns out that you have accepted his wine. This stiff tone made Turia's face suddenly become cold. Juliet, how I accept apprentices is my business. What qualifications do you have to point fingers? The situation in the field seemed to have become subtle. Chenrei had heard of this Juliet. He was also a senior master of the Alliance who was proficient in metals. Judging from the gossip of a warm-hearted man, Juliet was a little interested in Master Mavina, but unfortunately, she didn't like him at all. Not sure if it was because of Belluin, the cold-faced woman seemed to show a special attention to Turia, the drunkard. There was no room for two tigers on the same mountain, unless it was a male and a female. Now there was obviously one more male tiger. Between the two males with normal sexual orientation, it was naturally a sworn enemy who would tear each other apart. It's really none of my business how you accept apprentices, but you know, I also recently accepted a disciple, Oklo. There must always be some competition between young people to make progress. It's better to let them compete and learn from each other. How about this? If I lose, I will give you 5,000 contribution points. I almost forgot. You have been drinking for the past few years. It seems that you only have a little more than 1,000 contribution points left. Poor guy. How about this? You only need to pay 1,000 if you lose. Consider it as me letting you take advantage of me. How about it? Oklo's words were full of sarcasm. He intended to belittle Turia in front of everyone, especially Mavina. Turia was so angry that his nose became redder, but he knew that Oklo was a rare genius who had been praised by President Nate. He was not comparable to someone like Richard at all. It seemed that he could only swallow his anger. Why? Are you so timid that you don't even dare to compete? Juliet was still aggressive. Belluin clenched her fists angrily when she saw her father being so humiliated. Her face was flushed, but even she was not Oklo's opponent, let alone Richard. At this time, Chunrei suddenly said, "By the way, teacher, didn't you say that you want to take me to the third floor of the book collection hall to gain experience? It just so happens that someone is giving me contribution points." Even if he was a master, it was not easy to earn contribution points. Turia had promised to take Chunrei to the third floor for a few days after a while. It seemed that he was willing to pay a lot for this disciple. Chunrei was not a person who didn't know what was good for him. He still knew the principle of gratitude. If others give me 1 point, I will repay them 3 times more. Now that Juliet came to him, he could just offer Chunrei a borrowed flower. Turia was taken aback. Then he heard the newly accepted disciple continue to say, "That Master Pig, the time I have been apprenticed is too short. The teacher only had time to learn a little equipment appraisal. Do you dare to compete with this? I'm sorry, I'm from the countryside, and I don't know how to speak. Please forgive me, Master." In fact, if Chunrei showed his true ability, he could definitely make Aklo and even Juliet embarrassed. He was just limited by the identity he was currently using. However, the talent of magic eyes alone was enough to slap his face. Humph. If your teacher has the guts, then let us see your newly learned appraisal technique. Juliet heard that this bold little mechanic's rude attitude seemed to be intentional, but a country bumpkin was a country bumpkin after all. He had never heard of Aklo's name. Aklo was an upstart mechanic genius who was proficient in metal and accessories. He had a unique understanding of materials. Appraisal was originally one of his strengths. Now that this little mechanic who didn't know his limits proposed to compete in appraisal, he was simply courting his own death. The father and daughter's eyes lit up at the same time. They didn't expect Richard to have such a quick-witted method, dragging the competition to the only aspect that he was good at. With that heaven-defying gift of the magic eye, it was almost certain that he would earn 5,000 contribution points. Turia wasn't a fool. He rolled his eyes and pretended to blame Chunrei, then he looked at Mavina and gritted his teeth. "Who doesn't have the guts? Let's compete then." "That's great. Master Mavina and everyone present today are the witnesses of this competition." Juliet was overjoyed, but he didn't know that he had dug a pit for himself and was walking into it step by step. Chapter 440. Aklo was a young man from the Mammon royal family in his 30s. Although he was quite respectful in front of the 3 masters, his eyes when looking at Chunrei revealed undisguised arrogance and contempt. Aklo did have the capital to be proud. He was successful at a young age, dual specialized, and he was from the royal family. His future was limitless. Of course, there were many dual-specialized mechanics, but dual-specialized mechanic masters were rare in the entire demon realm. The difference of 1 word was 1,000 miles. In addition to the trio-specialized genius Master Arthur who shocked the demon realm, only the top mechanic master, Nate, and Horford who appeared later were famous for dual-specialized. Nate, the president of the Bloody Empire Mechanic Association, once said, "If Aklo can keep working hard and make a huge breakthrough in dual specialized, then his future achievements will definitely be above me." Although this sentence was a bit suspicious of building momentum for the royal family genius, Aklo had never failed in many contests with mechanics of the same level. His talent was beyond doubt. This reading hall was already full of mechanics. It was true that contribution points were needed here, but this kind of contest between geniuses and lucky ones might not be seen even with contribution points. Therefore, most people put down the reading in their hands and consciously acted as an audience. "Now, any mechanic present, please take out any piece of equipment as a prop for the contest." As soon as Juliet said that, many mechanics rushed to take out their proud works. Most of them wanted to show it in front of the 3 masters to attract more attention. Among them, there were also those who flattered Juliet and Aklo. Juliet randomly selected 1 weapon, 1 armor, and 1 jewelry each and placed them on the table in the center. "Okay, Aklo, Richard, you can start now. There are no restrictions on the tools and means. Whoever can identify the attributes of these equipment the fastest and most accurately will be the winner." The noisy surroundings suddenly quieted down. Not only to avoid disturbing the two people who were competing, but it was also a good opportunity for mechanics to observe and learn. However, almost no one was optimistic about the lucky guy, Chenrui. When Juliet shouted to start, Oclo had already taken out the corresponding equipment and began to test the attributes of the dagger. Appraisal was a profound knowledge. In order to accurately identify each attribute without affecting the equipment, one not only needed to be proficient in and operate various testing equipment, but also an experienced judgment. This was because the testing equipment was more of a reference data, and understanding and experience were the most important elements. In Oclo's eyes, this excellent grade dagger was not the best, but Oclo still rigorously tested it according to various degrees of precision, without the slightest nervousness or panic in front of so many people. That kind of immersive rhythm and proficiency in using the items made those mechanics secretly envious. However, at this moment, a very discordant voice rang out. "I'm done! Which master should I give this result to?" It was Chenrui who said this. Everyone thought they heard it wrong. Are you kidding me? This guy didn't use anything. He just walked up and pretended to look at the 3 pieces of equipment. He even yawned and wrote a few lines on a piece of paper. I thought he was just sharpening his spear at the last minute or something, but he actually finished it. Do you think you're a master? No, even a master isn't that fast. This time, not only Juliet and Oclo, but even Mavina was taken aback. Chenrui said again. Let's do it this way. I will write 3 copies. Teacher, Master Mavina, and that Master Pig each have 1 copy. Otherwise, someone will play tricks and not admit it. Chenrui quickly wrote 2 more copies and handed them to the 3 masters. Mavina and Juliet glanced at it and looked solemn. They walked directly to the table and began to identify the other 2 pieces of equipment in Oclo's hands. Juliet's expression became uglier and uglier. He couldn't help but take the dagger in Oclo's hand and began to identify it. Mavina's eyes were also constantly shaking with surprise. Only Master Turia stood calmly by the side. He took a sip of wine from time to hide the pride in his heart. An unimaginable genius! After the identification, Mavina put down the equipment in her hand and took a deep look at Chenrui. Her eyes fell on Master Turia. This time, you accepted an incredible disciple. This sentence almost directly determined Oclo's failure, and Master Juliet's face turned extremely pale, but he did not say a word. Oclo couldn't believe his ears. How is it possible? Isn't the word genius exclusive to me? Oclo didn't care about being rude and grabbed the note in Juliet's hand. He saw that the attributes of each piece of equipment were indeed written on it. Not only that, there were also the materials used for each piece of equipment. However, some materials were added with a note. I don't know. The teacher hasn't taught this yet. It's just a little talent. Master Turia was extremely proud in his heart. It was inconvenient to be arrogant in front of Mavina, so he said a few humble words. Chenrui wasn't arrogant either. He used his little maid wife's submissive method and stood behind Master Turia respectfully. At this time, the note in Turia's hand had been handed to the surrounding mechanics. Someone read it out loud. The 3 mechanics who took out the equipment all had a horrified expression. When the note was read, many people laughed out loud. However, the way they looked at Chenrui had changed dramatically. No wonder Master Mavina, who had always been cold, used the adjectives unimaginable and incredible consecutively. This guy named Richard, being able to be apprenticed to Master Turia was really not because of luck, but because he had a real abnormal genius ability. Now Master Turia, who has been silent, is probably going to be famous in the Bloody Empire. In other words, the really lucky one is Master Turia. He can actually find such a talented disciple. Impossible! I won't lose. It must be you despicable guys who use some cheating methods. Oclo lost his composure and yelled. He had always been praised high and mighty, so he was used to looking up. Now that he was slammed down, the gap made this so-called genius unbearable for a while. Master Juliet's face became even uglier. I personally selected these 3 pieces of equipment. Aklo said that, isn't he scolding me as his teacher too? The surrounding mechanics weren't fools. Some people who usually didn't like Aklo shouted one after another. Don't compete if you can't afford to lose. What genius! What a disgrace! These words stimulated Aklo even more. He shouted angrily. Richard! Just now doesn't count. If you're a man, compete again. Being a sore loser made Chinray look down on Aklo even more. He didn't bother to pay attention to such a person. I am the most outstanding genius of the royal family. I order you to compete with me again, you lowly demon! Aklo roared hysterically. I am the most outstanding genius of the royal family. I order you to compete with me again! This sentence offended even more people. Among the mechanics, the number of great demons was the largest, accounting for about 50%. The 3 masters were great demons, so the scolding continued for a while. Mavina's face became even more gloomy. Turiya was about to lose his temper, but Chinray said, The 2 rings on your hands are made by yourself, right? This one increases stamina recovery by 20% and speed up by 10%. There is also a special medium that seems to stimulate male senses. I remember I just saw it on the information on this floor. It's called erotic sheep flower, right? The effect should be to treat some male dysfunction? Hey, what is this one? It actually increases the stiffness of the limbs by 10% and endurance by 20%? Oh my demon god, what kind of rings are these? It doesn't matter if we compete again, but what I doubt now is if you throw away those messy auxiliary props on your body. Are you worthy of the word man in a certain aspect? As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Their eyes were all staring at the ring in Aklo's hand. Erotic sheep flower that treats male dysfunction? Increases the stiffness of the limbs? Increases endurance, speed, and stamina recovery? Whispers sounded one after another. The topics were all about the abilities of a certain genius male. There was laughter from time to time, and there were many female voices among them. Aklo's body trembled, and his face instantly turned red. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell straight to the ground. He actually fainted. Juliet also wanted to faint because 5,000 contribution points were almost all of his accumulation. However, with so many people as witnesses, especially Master Mavina, it was obviously impossible to renege on the debt. After the contest that caused a sensation in the book collection hall, Aklo became famous because of something. He would probably become the topic of idle people for a long time. It was certain that this mechanic genius wouldn't appear in public for a while. Of course, the most famous one was Chinray's magic eyes. This pair of gifted strange eyes could not only accurately identify the attributes of the equipment, but it could also judge the materials used. Even if the newly promoted mechanic's accomplishments in other fields were a mess, this unique and powerful talent alone was enough to make him stand among the most valued top geniuses in the Mechanic Association. The masters in the association began to envy the drunkard, Turiya. He actually had such good luck to accept a disciple who was likely to be the top appraisal master in the demon realm in the future. Several masters had begun to get closer to Turiya. The purpose was to use Chinray's magic eyes to distinguish the materials used in some rare equipment. This way, they could more clearly deduce the production process and techniques, making it possible to improve the mechanic skills that had fallen into a bottleneck. Out of Chinray's suggestion, Master Turiya didn't always grant his request. He said that he couldn't disturb his disciples' normal study, but this didn't affect the rise of his status in the association. A few days later, Chinray was preparing to go to Turiya's lab when he suddenly received a notice. This notice was sent by the president of the Bloody Empire Mechanic Association and the top mechanic master of the demon realm, Nate, saying that he was asked to go to the president's office. Nate had been meditating on mechanics behind closed doors from time to time. These few days he just came out. He should have heard about the magical talent of Master Turiya's new disciple, so he specially wanted to meet Chinray. Nate's appearance was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was burly, had a square face, thick eyebrows, and a mustache. He faintly exuded a deterrent momentum. Analytical eyes showed that his comprehensive strength assessment had reached the peak stage of the great Demon King. Nate didn't try to let Chunrei identify the equipment or ask other questions. His first sentence was, "I'm Nate. Mammon, the strongest mechanic master of the demon realm." This tone was full of strong confidence and domineering. He had the momentum of the top person in the demon realm.